this afternoon. I've got just a little after 1 here, so we're going to go ahead and get rolling. Again, thank you so much for joining. This is disbursement training for our down payment assistance owner-occupied projects. If you are a different type of project, please let me know. You'll want to be on a different training call, and I can get you the necessary link or recording. But hopefully everybody's here for down payment assistance. Gonna go through just a couple of housekeeping things off the top here. One thing I do want to know, I wanted to at least turn on my video to say hello, but here shortly I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my video to preserve the quality of our call today and make sure that everything goes as smoothly as possible. But at least wanted to say hello so you could see my face and know who I am, at least in some form. A couple of housekeeping things. This call today is going to be recorded. So for those that, uh, excuse me, sorry. For those that are going to be needing to leave early, anything like that, this call will be recorded and will be posted on our public website. So feel free to access that later if you'd like to refer back to this later. Anything that you forgot or anything like that. We know this is kind of a fire hose of information in one day, in a couple hours. So that will be there for you on the public website to reference back to. In addition to this, at the conclusion of this training, I will be sending an email to all participants with a copy of these slides that I'm going through today. So please don't panic, feel like you need to write every single detail down. I'm going to distribute these slides to you so that you all have a copy. They will also be posted to the public website alongside the recording. So you'll be able to have both of those things. In that email will also be the name and email address for the analyst that's assigned to your project. As much as I really enjoy getting to do trainings and talk to you guys and answer questions, we run about 80 different projects simultaneously. So we have a wonderful team of analysts that we distribute all those projects out to. And those analysts are each assigned to projects, and they'll be in charge of reviewing your disbursement requests, going through the information and kind of being the expert on your project. So I will give you the name and the email address of that analyst. If you have any questions after this training, things like that, or just questions going forward during the disbursement process, they're going to be your main point of contact. And speaking of questions, if you have questions during the training today, please feel free to use the Q&A function in the toolbar of your Zoom chat there. If you can use Q&A, that's best. I know there's a chat function and Q&A. The Q&A helps send the questions directly to me so I can see them. So those will probably be the fastest ones I see, but I will also try to check the chat function and make sure I'm covering all your questions. I do love questions, so please don't hesitate to shoot them over to me while I'm talking, and I will periodically take breaks throughout the presentation to try and address those questions. If there's any questions I miss for any reason, or again, if you have any additional questions after this presentation, please feel free to reach out to your analyst and we will make sure that we get your questions answered. All right, so a quick high-level overview of what we're going to cover today. So first, we're going to go through highlights from the AHP implementation plan. The implementation plan in its full is published to our public website, and it's about 48 pages, pretty long if you want a nice read to potentially put you to sleep there. Good legal writing, but nonetheless, very important document. I'm going to cover the policies and procedures that are really important to the disbursement process today. So going to cover that first. Then we are going to look at the documents that you're required to submit with every disbursement request. We'll look at some examples. We'll look at some resources available to help guide you through those processes. Then we'll move into the AHP public website. I'll show you where all the forms are, where all our resources are located, how to navigate the public website. And then last but not least, we will go into AHP Online itself, and we will submit an actual disbursement request, or at least a test one. So you can see the actual system, what it looks like, what the disbursement looks like, and how to upload all of that information. So with that, we'll go ahead and get rolling with our first section here on the implementation plan. So a couple of highlights from here. Disbursements are funded on a reimbursement basis after closing. So you as the sponsor organization, if you're from the sponsor, I should clarify up front, I'm going to use this term sponsor and member a lot during this presentation. For the sponsor organization, that's going to be The majority of you on this call that are coming from nonprofit agencies, other community organizations, things like that, you guys are going to be the main drivers of this grant and making sure all the documentation gets submitted, all the households get enrolled, all that good stuff. So that's what I'm referring to when I say sponsor. When I say member, that is the member bank that you partnered with to submit your application. So if I ever say member, that's the bank. Sponsor is you as the community organization, assuming that the majority of you on this call are from our sponsor organizations. So disbursements being funded on a reimbursement basis. So you as the sponsor organization are going to be responsible for, again, qualifying the household, getting all the documents put together. You'll carry everything all the way through to closing. You will front the grant funds at the closing, and then you will submit the disbursement request to us after closing, and we will reimburse you for those expenses. When you do submit that reimbursement request to us, the amount must be rounded down to the nearest dollar. This generally isn't a major issue for down payment assistance projects, but if for any reason the grant amount has change on the end of it in the closing disclosure, you'll have to wipe that change amount off the end to be able to submit the reimbursement to us. Our accounting system just really doesn't allow us to disperse out and change. So you'll want to make sure that it is a round, even number for that grant amount you're requesting for reimbursement. All right, AHP funds cannot be used for the repayment of other debt. So if the homeowner or home buyer, excuse me, is paying off any credit card debt, personal loans, things of that form, our funds cannot be used to repay any of that personal debt. It is strictly to help with the closing costs and any eligible repairs, which we'll cover here in a little bit. Non-occupying co-borrowers and co-owners are not permitted. This rule, there's not a whole lot of exceptions we can provide around this. I'll provide you the definitions of co-borrower and co-owner here in a little bit. They're in Exhibit E, as an elephant, of our implementation plan, but I have them copied into the slides for your convenience. Generally, again, non-occupying co-borrowers and co-owners are not going to be permitted. Co-signers are okay. Again, we define all of those so you can see the difference. I know our definitions may slightly vary from some lenders, so please make sure to check out those definitions to make sure you do not fall into that category. All right, manufactured homes. If the home buyer is purchasing a manufactured home, it must be affixed to a permanent foundation. So in essence, it needs to be titled as real estate. So we want to see a real estate transaction. This is due to the lien that we will place on the property. It's called a real estate retention agreement, which we'll talk about again. But in order to file that lien, it does need to be affixed to a permanent foundation and be titled as real estate. All right. Project sponsors should maintain and provide backup documentation. All we're really saying with this is that you're going to be submitting a lot of documents to us over the course of time with all your disbursement requests. We just ask that you keep a copy of those documents on your personal computer somewhere so that if worse came to worse, our system crashed for any reason. It has not happened. We don't expect it to happen. But, you know, computers can be computers some days. We just ask that you keep a copy of those things on your personal computer or work computer, whatever that may be, so that if we lose something for any reason, we can grab that back from you. Okay, projects are limited to 8 open unfunded disbursement requests at any given time. So when you're working in AHP Online and submitting disbursement requests, you will be initiating the disbursement requests. You do not have to finish them in one sitting. I'll show you an example. You can go back in, work on it. You can work on it over the course of days, weeks. You can upload documents as you get them, as you receive them. If you would like to do that, that's totally fine. But once you submit the disbursement request into us at the Federal Home Loan Bank, it starts counting towards this 8. So you can have a maximum of 8 disbursement requests that we are currently reviewing here at the Federal Home Loan Bank at any given time. Of course, anything that's already been funded, that does not count against this 8 because that money's already out the door and approved. So that's not of concern. And again, anything that you're working on but have not submitted to us does not count towards this 8. It is just the one view. The reason that we do this is kind of a dual accountability thing. So we want to make sure that, of course, we're reviewing things as quickly as possible. When we get a bunch of disbursements all at once, if someone submits 10 or 20 at a time, it gets really difficult for us to move through those and get all the corrections that we need and keep all that information straight. Same thing for our sponsors, though. We know when we're sending you a bunch of emails, it all tends to get mixed up if there's too many disbursements running at one time. So please make sure that you're responding to your analyst as quickly as possible if they request any additional information to make sure that we're staying within that 8 and getting that funding out the door to you as quickly as possible. All right, the last note on this screen is about modifications. This is hopefully something you won't have to deal with, but nonetheless, we want to cover it just in case you run into the circumstance, just so you know what it requires. So when I'm talking about modifications, this is in reference to the scoring commitments that you made in your application. Things like serving households that have an individual with special needs, or providing financial education or housing education, or working in areas that are designated as difficult development areas. All those scoring commitments that you made. That's just a few examples. Your scoring commitments are listed in your AHP agreement, which is that lovely legal agreement you would have signed here about a month or two ago. So you can see your respective scoring commitments in that document. But when we're talking about modifications, this is the circumstance where you may find yourself not able to meet one of the commitments that you have made in your agreement. So if you are finding that you are struggling to finish out one of those commitments or find the households meeting one of those commitments, that's when you may have to consider a modification. In order for us to do a modification, it requires a couple different things. The first being an effort to cure and a good cause. So we want to see that you as the sponsor organization have tried to cure the problem. So let's give an example of the special needs populations. So let's say that you have been reaching out to organizations that work with individuals with special needs. You've been putting out specific advertisements to certain agencies, things like that, that may help you find those populations. And those advertisements, those partnerships, those things like that are not panning out with any applicants. Once you can establish that effort to cure, that you've put in the effort to try and meet the commitment, that also kind of hand in hand goes with the good cause. So the good cause being that there are no applicants coming in from all the efforts that you are putting in to try and meet that commitment. Once we can establish an effort to cure and a good cause, we also have to make sure the project continues to score high enough to be approved in the funding round. What we mean by that is we gave you points in your application for the certain scoring commitments that you committed to. When we remove the scoring commitment or reduce the required number for that commitment, we also have to reduce or remove the points associated with that scoring commitment. So when those points are removed, the project needs to continue to score high enough to be within the range of funded projects for the year that you were awarded. So assuming most of the people on this call received a 2025 AHP award, you'd have to fall within the range of funded projects in the 2025 funding year. All right. Couple more highlights from the implementation plan here. This is more on the legal end, but nonetheless important. The bank at its discretion may reject disbursements for which the bank has not received the requested additional information within 30 days of our request. Now, before you panic, I promise we're not just going to start rejecting things willy-nilly. The intent here is that we're just not wanting people to ghost us. So if we reach out to you with some additional corrections that are needed on a disbursement, something of that form, and we receive no response whatsoever to emails, to phone calls, there's nobody answering anything. At that point, if we go 30 days without receiving a response to anything, then we do hold the right to reject a disbursement. Now, if you're communicating with us and talking with us and saying, you know, we're going through these steps to try and get this fixed or whatever that may be, then we're not going to reject it. We're just asking that you communicate with us when you do receive emails or phone calls so that we know you are receiving them and that you guys are working towards coming into compliance with whatever issue may have been identified. The bank staff also will be monitoring the commitments for your project and may place the project on a punitive list. So when we're talking about commitments, again, that's talking about those scoring commitments that we talked about with modifications. So as you guys are moving through your project, we're going to be watching your scoring commitments and making sure that you're moving through those scoring commitments and completing them at a similar rate as you are completing your units. So if you had to say you had 10 units that needed to take a housing education course. When you're about halfway through the project, we want to see that you have finished about half of those units, or about five, give or take a unit or so. So we want to see 5 units completed at about the halfway point if you were doing a total of 10 units. If we start to notice that the project is falling significantly behind, we may put the project on a punitive list or on what we call a disbursement hold. The reason we're doing this is because we want to make sure projects aren't ending in non-compliance. That disbursement hold would just mean that we're saying, all right, we're going to put a pause on the project here, and we need you to only submit disbursements that meet whatever commitment is falling behind. And again, we're doing this so that you don't end in non-compliance. If the project ends in non-compliance and does not complete its commitments as made in the agreement, then the project is required to repay all the subsidy that we've dispersed. This is very uncommon. And again, it's due to a lot of efforts that we're doing on the front end to make sure that you don't end in non-compliance. So the reason that a project would end up on disbursement hold is really out of the effort to make sure that nobody repays us. We want the money to go out the door, and we want the money to stay out the door. So that is the reason that that may happen. The bank also may suspend or debar any member, sponsor, or owner from AHP participation if there's a pattern of noncompliance or a single instance of flagrant noncompliance. Again, very uncommon, but any sort of illegal activity, forgery, all that good stuff, we do hold the right to suspend or debar for any sort of illegal activity. The bank also, in its sole discretion, may grant exceptions to certain provisions in the implementation plan. This excludes our regulatory requirements, though. So there are certain policies in our implementation plan that we may be able to provide an exception around. These policies that are really important are listed in each AHP disbursement request, and you'll see those certification statements in the disbursement in AHP Online, which we'll look at later. I will specifically point those out for you. When you're going through those certifications, we want you to be able to say yes to all of those things. If you're saying no to something, that is a good indicator you may need an exception. There are certain provisions, though, or items in that list that we cannot provide exceptions around because they are federal regulation. This program is federally regulated, though it's not federal dollars. And if it is a federal regulation, that is something we cannot provide an exception around, and we would not be able to fund the disbursement. So those certification statements will be very important for you. Please make sure to look through those. Again, I'll show you those today inside the disbursement request, so you make sure that you are good to go and get your funding. All right. Okay, this is a direct screenshot from Exhibit A of the implementation plan. This is our project cost guidelines. We'll go over some other guidelines here in a minute concerning the loan. But for project cost guidelines, a couple things that I want to point out here. We'll be looking at everything that's referring to down payment assistance projects specifically, as well as the other fees. So developer and contractor fees are not allowed for any of our projects. So again, pretty uncommon for our down payment assistance, but nonetheless, if there is a third-party developer involved in any rehabilitation work, things like that, those developer fees are not permitted to be paid for with AHP funds. The construction costs are strictly related to rehabilitation projects, so we're going to skip that section and go down to other fees. If you have the home buyer education commitment as one of your scoring commitments in your AHP agreement, you are allowed to charge a fee up to $500 per unit for each household covered the expenses of the class itself, or if you're teaching the class itself or paying your staff to teach that class. So that fee we will want to see on the closing disclosure, and I will show you what that looks like in an example here in a little bit. Another fee that you're eligible to charge is what's called our sponsor fee. We do recognize that you all, as the sponsor organization, require staff and time to be able to run this grant. It takes a lot of time, we know, to get all the documentation, to qualify the households, all of that good stuff. So this sponsor fee is to help cover your expenses as a sponsor organization for those kind of overhead expenses per se for running the grant. So for our purchase projects or down payment assistance, you can charge up to a $1,000 sponsor fee per household that you work with. That fee, again, will need to show up on the closing disclosure, and I'll show you an example of that. You do not have to charge the maximum 1,000. You can charge 500, you can charge 700, 200, anything in between. You don't have to charge a fee at all. We do not have any we're not going to judge you for taking the full 1,000. We set it at 1,000 for a reason. We just set the maximum. So no judgment on our end. You can pick whatever you want between 0 and 1,000 for your sponsor fee if you would like. All right, couple things on deadlines and reporting. I'm going to start with deadlines. So disbursement requests need to be submitted no later than 90 days from the closing date on the closing disclosure. So what we mean by submitted, there is a little bit of a nuance to this, I should say. So when you, as the sponsor organization, go into AHP Online, you fill out all the information, all of that good stuff, and you click submit. At that point, the disbursement is sponsor approved. So when we're talking sponsor approved, then an automated email is going to go to your member contact. And your member bank is also going to have to approve that disbursement request. So it needs to be both sponsor and member approved, and then it arrives on our desks here at the Federal Home Loan Bank. So when we say 90 days for submission, it needs to be 90 days between the closing date and the submission and our receipt of that disbursement at the Federal Home Loan Bank. Okay, a couple other things. A minimum of one disbursement request needs to be submitted within 12 months of the date of AHP application approval. So we call this our project start deadline. So you'll need to make sure that by your 12-month deadline is December 19th of this year. So the AHP application approval was the date that we sent all those amazing emails that said, congratulations, you're awarded. That was December 19th of 25. So you have until December 19th of this year to submit your first disbursement request into us. And again, that's submitted, so sponsor and member approved. We do hold the right at the bank to extend the project start date for up to 1 6-month period if you are running into issues hitting that deadline. If you are running into issues, just reach out to us a few weeks in advance of that December deadline, and we can talk about a potential extension if that is possible. All right, looking way down the line, all requests for disbursement of AHP subsidy need to be submitted within 42 months of the project approval date. So this is looking towards the end of your project, getting to those final units. You need to make sure that all disbursement requests are submitted to us within 3.5 years. So that date for you, your 42-month deadline, is June 19th of 2029. I know that sounds a long ways off, but simultaneously, it always seems to sneak up really fast. So just have that date in your mind and on the horizon. If you get done earlier than that, that's fantastic. We'll get the project closed out, and you're welcome to reapply for additional funding, things like that. But nonetheless, need to have all of them in by that 42-month at the latest. The last deadline on here is regarding our 48-month deadline. So once you've submitted all your disbursement requests, we have another 6 months past the 42-month deadline here at the Federal Home Loan Bank to get all those disbursements reviewed, any clarifications cleaned up, and get those dollars out the door. So by the 4-year mark, or December 19th of 2029, we want to have all money out the door and have the project done. Okay, I received a question on here. When we say closing date, do we mean the closing for the end buyer or the closing on the bank financing. So that's going to be the closing on the loan for the home for the home buyer. So whatever the closing date is on the closing disclosure, that's going to be your closing date for our purposes. All right. Couple of things for reporting. So reporting wise, there's not a lot of requirements other than the disbursements themselves to get you guys your money. But there are a couple things I do want to cover here. So semi-annually, you'll be required to provide what we call a semi-annual progress report or a SAPR to us. That SAPR is going to be due one in January and one in July of each year. So your first one will be due in July. So you've got a few months to go here. What these reports are, all projects are required to fill them out while they're in the kind of disbursement phase of their project. It just gives us a general idea of where your project is at a high level. So it's a quick report, takes maybe 5 or 10 minutes to complete. We have a user guide on our website, and I'll show you where that is, just because I know it's so infrequent. It's hard to remember how to fill them out sometimes. But again, it just gives us a high level overview, where you guys at, where you're headed, what your pipeline is, making sure that you guys are moving through your money in a timely manner. Again, this is another one of those measures that makes sure that you guys are not going to end in non-compliance. So we want to make sure as much as possible that that's not going to happen, and SAPR is one of those ways that we check that. When the SAPRs go out in January and July, the report, you will get an automated email, or the contacts that are assigned to the project in the system will get the automated email telling you that a report is due. At that point in time, your project will go on a temporary disbursement hold. It's not a punitive disbursement hold by any measure, but all it is it's a hold where you won't be able to submit any new disbursements until the SAPR is submitted. Once you've submitted the SAPR, then you will come off that disbursement hold and be able to start submitting again. So it's really just a way for us to make sure that everybody gets that report in a timely manner. The second report on here is what we call our project completion report. This is going to look way down the line again. This is once you have submitted all your disbursements, we funded all of your disbursements, and we are done with the project. At that point, you'll be required to submit a project completion report to us. That report will be due about a month after your completion date. It's very short. It really is just you certifying that you complied with fair housing laws during the project, and that you were integrally involved in helping the buyer obtain financing or coordinating that financing with their lender, things of that form, qualifying them for the grant, all those good things. So very short, very easy. There is a specific user guide for that on our website too, and I will point that out. But also recognize that that's a ways down the line. So if you have questions about that when you reach there, you're always welcome to reach out to us. Okay, a couple of definitions. I'm not going to read these verbatim, but these are directly from Exhibit E of the implementation plan. Again, that's Exhibit E as an elephant. The main things that I do want to point out here is in regards to area median income. So you have targeting requirements on your grant. So you will have committed in your application to certain targeting categories, such as 80% of the area median income and below, 50% of the area median income and below, and a certain number of units have to meet the categories that you've selected. When we're looking at income and AMI, we utilize the USDA income limits. So we publish those limits on our public website. I'll show you where those are located so you can see the caps. It's sorted by state and county, and again, goes through the individual income limit categories and tells you what the caps are in your county for different household sizes. So I'll show you where that's located, but just keep in mind it is the USDA income limits for our program. The other definitions on this screen are for co-borrower, co-owner, and co-signer. So I mentioned these a little bit earlier. We do not allow non-occupying co-borrowers or co-owners. Co-signers are okay. So these definitions are just here in case they may differ from your organizations or the lender you're working with, to make sure that you know which we categorize under each definition here. All right, a couple more. I'm not going to go specifically through a lot of these. A lot of these are referring to guidelines for interest rate, front ratio, lender fees, things like that. Pretty basic definitions. But the one that I really want to cover here is the definition of household. So, household includes any individuals who currently or will occupy the house or residence. So this is really important when it comes to income qualifying a household. So when you are doing your income qualification, one, we want to make sure that all individuals in the household are accounted for so that we're using the correct income limits, and that all individuals, again, who will live in the household are also included in that count. So if you have somebody, say you have a family that is going to have an adult parent that's moving in with them as a result of purchasing their new home. They will be part of that household. So please make sure any individuals who currently or will occupy the new home are included in that income calculation. When we're looking at income calculations, the household size includes everybody in the household, including minors, when we're counting people. So we want to make sure that when we're counting the number of people in the household, we get all those people, including minors, so that we're using those correct income limits again. When we're counting income itself, the actual money earned, we only include the income of those that are 18 years of age and older. So just the adult household members we will include the monetary earnings for. We'll talk a little bit about income guidelines here in a few minutes. I'm not going to cover income extensively. I will preface that up front. We have a lot of great resources on our website to teach you what kind of documentation we require, how to do the income calculation, the forms that you need to fill out for that. So I'm going to defer a lot of that to those guides and resources on our website because we could spend hours talking about income alone. So I don't want to keep you here until tomorrow. So we are going to go ahead and defer to the website. But of course, if you have any specific questions about a household or a specific type of income, you are always welcome to reach out to us, and we're more than happy to discuss that. Okay, got a question in the chat. Are family gifts at closing allowable? Yes, that's fine as long as we see the gift funds listed on the closing disclosures. We'd usually see that on page 3. If you're listing them and you list them as gift funds, that is acceptable. Yes. Okay. Speaking of guidelines for the mortgage, these are from Exhibit B of the implementation plan. So this is all of our guidelines regarding the loan itself, everything from the mortgage term to the interest rate to front ratio, things of that form. So please make sure you check out these guidelines. Again, I'm not going to go through them individually, but please make sure you're familiar with these, that the lender is familiar with these, that's working with you on this program if you're working with a third-party lender. Please make sure they have these guidelines and that each of the loans that you're working with do meet these guidelines. If you're having problems meeting one of these guidelines, please reach out to us prior to closing so we can help you figure out a solution if necessary to either get within guidelines or if an exception is going to be allowed. Again, please reach out prior to closing though. If you close with something outside of guidelines and we receive it and find out that we're not within guidelines, then we may have issues getting that funded on the back end, and we don't want that to happen. So please reach out to us prior to closing if you have any issues meeting any of these guidelines that are on this screen. Okay. This is a long definition, I know. This is, again, from Exhibit E of the implementation plan, the definition section, and goes through the eligible and ineligible closing costs that our funds can be used towards. The big thing with ineligible closing costs are going to be things like payments of personal obligations, like personal loans, liens, things of that form. But please go ahead, check this out. Again, not going to read you word for word here, since I know you guys can find that. But grab that from Exhibit E, check that out. And if you have any questions about what is specifically eligible or ineligible, don't hesitate to reach out to us and we'd be happy to discuss that with you. Okay, so from here, we're going to move into the documentation section of our training here. This slide has a checklist of the documents that you will need to submit with each disbursement request. This checklist is also available on our public website. I'll show you where that's located. There's a couple extra notes I added into this one, though, just to help you find some resources, things like that associated with each document. Again, we're going to cover some of these at a high level. I will do an example of an actual feasibility workbook using a sample CD that I have on hand. So we will do a feasibility workbook, but for the remaining documents, I'm going to just talk about some resources available on our website. And then, of course, you're welcome to reach out to us if you have specific questions regarding those documents. The first of it being the income calculation workbook. The income calculation workbook will be required to be submitted with every disbursement request. This is the document we use to make sure that the household is within the AMI limits that you are targeting. You will also be required to provide the income documents that you utilize to verify said income. So I mentioned earlier, there's some resources on our website for income, specifically in the income calculation training section of the website. There is the AHP and Turnkey Income Calculation Guide. Turnkey is another one of our grant programs. It's a separate one from AHP, but we use the same income guidelines, so that's why you may see Turnkey on some documents. That guide, I highly recommend pulling that document and reading it in full for those that are going to be doing income calculations. It specifically goes through each type of income, or at least the most common types. It's pretty comprehensive, but of course we know there's some one-offs here and there that may not fall into one of the categories in the guide. But it goes through each type of income that we would traditionally see, what kind of documentation options we will accept for each type of income, and then how to use that document to fill out the income calculation workbook. Additionally, in that section of the website, there are video tutorials that guide you through how to use each of those types of income documents to fill out the income calculation workbook. So if you're a bit of a visual learner, kind of like me, you can go grab those videos and see a live training on how to utilize those documents to fill out the workbook. I am going to pull open a workbook just here briefly. Again, going to cover it very high level, just so you can at least see it. And then if you have specific questions, again, don't hesitate to reach out to us. This workbook I filled out with some just test information. So just to give us an example, so it has something in it. Let me make it a little bigger here. Okay, so this is our income calculation workbook. Again, you'll fill this out for every household you are working with. The information here on the upper left is just generic information on the household, your member bank that you're partnering with. This is the member institution that you partnered with on your application, not necessarily the lender. You don't have to lend with the member you partnered with, but you can. So this is specifically the one you partnered with on your application. The name of your home buyer, and then the state and county that the property being purchased is located in. Once you select a state, there is a drop down here. Then the counties will also show up as options, and you can select the applicable county. Then we have the program enrollment date. This is a really important piece of income qualification. So if you get nothing else out of this discussion about income today, this is the one thing I definitely want you to hold on to here. The program enrollment date is the date that you have all income documents for all household members and you are ready to complete a full income calculation. So in essence, to fill out this income calculation workbook in full. The reason this date is so important is because this is the date that we put our requirements for income documents. We base it off this date here. So all of your income documents in general, there are caveats to this, but in general, your income documents need to be dated within the 60 days prior of the program enrollment date. Again, there are caveats. They're all outlined in the income calculation guide. Things like Social Security, we understand they get one letter a year, so it may not be dated within the 60 days prior. So you definitely check the guide for those caveats and things like that. But as a general rule, all income documents need to be dated within the 60 days prior. This is to make sure that, again, we're doing a consistent income calculation and making sure all those household members, all their documents are at a similar time frame. So we're looking at income in one period of time. We don't want one pay stub to be dated in January of 2025 and another pay stub dated 2 weeks ago. So that doesn't give us a consistent idea of what the household's income looks like at a specific point in time. So please, please, please make sure that your income documents are dated correctly based on your enrollment date. There is information in the guide as well about this enrollment date if you would like to read a little bit more. And again, if you have any questions, please let us know. Okay. Household composition. This is where you're going to list all individuals who live or will live in the home. This includes minors. So you want to make sure this list is everybody who is or is going to live in the home. This makes sure, again, our income limits are correct. Our document has all the USDA income limits built into it. You can see this is already spitting out an AMI percentage for me. It's doing the math for me. It's because it's looking at this household size. It knows what county I'm in, and it's able to compare the income entered to that specific county and household size. So please make sure you list everybody here so we use the correct income limits. But again, the income itself, when we're talking about the actual dollars, we're only going to include the income of adults. So please make sure that you're filling out a tab for each income earning adult. If you have an adult that does not earn any income, is completely zero income, no Social Security, no retirement, no self-employment, no Uber, anything like that, then they will need to fill out a zero income certification. Very short form. I'll show you where the template is on our website for that. It's pretty much just them signing off saying, yes, I do not earn any of the types of income listed on this form. So please make sure you get a zero income form for any adult household members that do not earn any income. Otherwise, if they do earn income, you will be filling out one of these household member tabs for each income earning household member. All these household member tabs look identical. You'll fill out one for each of those adults that earns income. You can see I just put in some example information in here. The first section is going to be for your wage and salary earners. Again, I'm not going to go through in a ton of detail because of all the resources on our website. There's also these notes off on the right-hand side to hopefully help guide you through what information you need to use from your pay stub or verification of employment or VOE to fill out this section of the ICW. So just keep that in mind. Go ahead and refer to that document. I'll give a quick high-level overview of the sections here, but then again, we'll defer to our resources on the website for how to fill this out and what documentation is needed. So section 1, again, wage and salary earners. These are your classic 8 to 5 workers or people that are working part-time, hourly, things like that. There are 2 employer sections available. So if they have 2 different employers, you can fit them both. If they have more than 2, just let us know and we'll help you figure out how to get that fit into the workbook for you. Section 2 is for our seasonal income earners. So for our purposes, seasonal income is those that do not work year round. So this isn't part-time year-round employment. If you have somebody that just kind of works an hour here and an hour there and does that throughout the whole year, that's just regular hourly or wage earning. But for seasonal, we're talking things like lifeguards that work outside. They may only work during the summer and then they don't work the rest of the year. Or paraeducators is another good example. They may work for the school year and then they're off during the summer and don't get paid in the summer. Those would be considered seasonal income for our purposes. So there are 2 employer sections for seasonal in case they have 2 different seasonal jobs. Then section 3 is our self-employment and rental income. There are 3 different sections to fill in if they have multiple self-employment jobs. This is going to include, of course, any sort of literal business that they run, as well as if they have any sort of rental properties that they rent out. So you'll most likely be using a tax return or a P&L for this information. Again, the guide goes through which to use and when, but that's what this section is for. And then the final section is our other income section. This kind of encompasses all the remaining types of income that have periodic payments, things like child support, alimony, Social Security, pensions, IRAs, all of that lovely stuff will go into this section here. Okay, again, all the household members look identical to this one. You just fill out one for each income earning adult. And then once you've filled those out, you'll see that the income workbook spits out the household AMI percentage for you. So it does the math there so you know which category your household falls into in regards to targeting. All right. So that's again my high level overview. I know there's a lot more that goes into income. So don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, or I'm happy to answer what I can while we're working through training today if you do have a specific question. Okay. The next document in our documentation checklist is our scoring documentation. So again, we've talked about scoring a little bit, all those requirements, scoring requirements that you committed to in your application that are listed in that AHP agreement. Many of them have documentation requirements to verify that the household meets whatever commitment you will be selecting in the disbursement request. We have a guide under the resources section of our website called the Scoring Commitment User Guide. I'm, again, not going to go through every individual scoring commitment today just because there are plenty of them, enough to fill up 11 pages here. But we do have this Scoring Commitment User Guide. I'll show you where it is on our public website. All the scoring commitments are listed in alphabetical order. So you can go through here, find the scoring commitment that you're looking for. This document is searchable, so you can use Control F on your keyboard and type in whatever commitment you're looking for so that you don't have to scroll through the whole thing if you don't like to. I know I don't like to sometimes. So feel free to use that search function, find what you're looking for, and then there'll be a bulleted list of the valid options for documenting the specific scoring commitments. I will note that the guide that is currently on the website is missing just a few scoring commitments from the 2025 round. They were brand new for this year. We're currently working on getting those added and are planning to have that document posted probably next week. So the vast majority of the commitments are in this guide, but if you notice things like climate resiliency or district distribution or rural households is missing, I believe those are the main three. Those will come up in the new guide that will be posted here next week. So apologies for the delay, working on getting that up as soon as possible so that you have those documentation options available to you. All right. So that covers our scoring documentation. The disbursement feasibility workbook is our next document. We're going to go through an actual example here of the feasibility workbook because I think this one's a really important one. It can be a little bit confusing. So we're going to actually work through an example together here, looking at an example closing disclosure that we have, which I will pull up. I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm going to split my screen and hopefully makes everything big enough to be able to read, but let me know if we have any issues. So the feasibility workbook, first I'll just talk high level before I pull open that closing disclosure again. Let me make bigger. That's really small text. There we go. So the workbook, when you first open it, will come to the Start Here tab. And what you need to do on this tab is select the type of project that you are. There are two different tabs that could apply to our down payment assistance projects. The first being DPA or down payment assistance. So that's the easy one. The other one is this below MR, which is below market rate. If you, as the sponsor, are acting as the lender and you are providing a below market rate interest rate, then you will use the below MR tab. But you need to fall into both of those categories. Sponsor is the lender and you're providing a below market rate interest rate. If you meet those two, you'll use below MR. Otherwise, you will use DPA. So I'm going to do an example with the DPA tab today. A lot of the information you enter in below MR, I shouldn't say a lot, a good chunk of the information you enter in below MR is going to be very similar, but there'll be some differing information regarding that below market rate interest rate and getting that filled out. If you do fall into that category and need help filling out the below MR tab, please let me know. But again, I'm just going to go through the DPA tab today since this is the most common situation that we'll see. So I'm going to click DPA. When I do that, the DPA tab is going to come available here. You'll notice all the other tabs are still blacked out, so I promise you won't fill out the wrong one. It'll open up the one that you select. So this is going to be what we're going to fill out here today. So I'm going to attempt to split my screen here and hopefully fit the vast majority of this. Okay, we're going to try this. So, okay, the first thing that you need to fill out in your feasibility workbook is just the household name and your project number here at the top. So I'm just going to put in a test name here. And then the project number. If you don't know what your project number is, it starts with 2025A and then goes on to 100 and then two other numbers. We'll put 40. This number is on your AHP agreement. It's also going to be an AHP online. You may need that agreement just the first few times you type it in, but eventually, of course, you'll memorize that and have it no problem. But what you're looking for is that 2025A number that's in your agreement to enter there. All right. Next, we're going to fill out all the information. This information is mostly going to come from our closing disclosure. Some of this is going to come from our income calculation workbook. So we'll reference that as well. And we're going to fill it all out in this group one column. The other columns are shaded out. So please ignore those. We utilize those for our application process. So if you worked on the application, you may have seen those. So this probably looks semi-familiar for those that worked on your application, but nonetheless going to go through an example of what this looks like with a singular closing disclosure here. So, of course, your closing disclosure is going to have a bunch of borrower-seller information up here. We've redacted this one to make sure that we're protecting personal information. So this is just random numbers and a random closing date here in this document. A lot of you can probably tell because 4.5% rate would be really great right now. So we love that for this home buyer. So what we're going to do first is we're going to put in our household location, meaning the state. So you can just put the initials of the state. We'll say that this household is here in Topeka, where I'm at. So we're going to say Kansas. It's of course going to shift me over here when I start typing. See if I can get it to not do that. Then it's going to ask for my county. So I am in Shawnee County here in Kansas. Then it's going to ask for the AMI percentage of the household. So you'll have to have finished your income calculation to be able to fill out that information. We'll pull our workbook open again here, and I'll show you where I pull that number from. So again, talked about this earlier, that household AMI percentage right here, it rounds to 2 decimals in the feasibility workbook. So we're at 47.22%. So I'm just going to plug that in here. The number of units, this is always going to be 1 since they are purchasing one home. This number would be different if you were working on an application workbook, but for our purposes, it's just going to be 1. Then we have our household size. So the household size is going to be the number of people living in the home. So in your income calculation workbook, that's going to be the total number of people listed in this household composition. For my example today, I just have 1 person, so I'm going to put a 1 there. Then we're going to put in the annual household income. Again, that's going to come from the income calculation workbook. So our annual household income, if you scroll down to this section down here, we'll see our total annual household income. We'll also talk about our front ratio here in a second. That gets calculated in our ICW. But total household income is $45,000. So we'll enter that here. And then you'll see it's going to calculate out a monthly household income. This is going to come into play when it comes to front ratio. That's why that information's entered there. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. I got a question from Habitat for Humanity. You used below MR for your application workbook, confirming you can still use that for these reports. Yes, if you used below MR application, and again, if you are going to be the lender and you're providing a below market rate interest rate, you will use that tab for the disbursement requests as well. Yes. All right. Now we get into some information about the closing disclosure itself. So finally going to start using some of the figures over here on the right. the purchase price of the home. So the purchase price, you'll see we've got our sale price up here. Of course, that's found in a couple different locations, but one of them is up here on page 1. So the purchase price on the home is the $77,000. Then we're going to go down and talk about lender fees and loan discount fees. So the lender fees and loan discount fees we'll find in section A. For our purposes for the AHP program, and again, I apologize, these numbers are kind of small. For the AHP program, your lender fees are going to be the total of everything here in section A, less any of the discount points. So this one here, line 1, does not have any discount points. So this one is not going to have a loan discount fee. We're going to leave that as 0 here, and I can enter that as 0 just for clarity there. So no discount points here. We just have loan fees. So we have $500 in total in loan fees. Again, we're going to take the total for the AHP program. Your lender fee is going to be the total in section A less the amount that is put into the discount fee line. So this is just the total 500 for this one. I'm going to skip the other closing costs for a minute and come back to it just because it makes a little more sense in my head this way. But again, feel free to do this however you see logical when you're filling out this workbook. I'm going to skip down to the home buyer counseling fee for a minute and our sponsor fee and fill these out. So again, if you have a household taking home buyer counseling that has taken the class, you can charge up to a $500 fee to help cover the expenses for the class. For this example we have here, you'll see that the home buyer education fee shows up down here in section H. We do want to see the home buyer education fee show up somewhere here on the closing disclosure. It doesn't necessarily have to be in section H. This is a semi-common section, but if you want to put it somewhere else, that is okay. But we want to see something specifically referring to the home buyer education and then see that fee going to the home buyer education provider or the sponsor if you guys are providing that class. You'll see that this fee, I apologize, everything's kind of a little out of line here, but the 401 plus the 99 that was paid before closing, this one is split into 2 pieces. We don't see this too often, but wanted to at least provide an example with something with costs paid before closing for the sake of seeing that and an example with you all. So for this one, there is a total $500 fee that was charged for homebuyer education. So you do want to include for any fees, anything that was paid outside of closing as well or prior to closing. So this one was a total $500 fee for homebuyer education. So we're going to stick that in here. The sponsor fee, again, we do want to see the sponsor fee listed in the workbook. You can see it's sponsorship fee in this workbook or in this closing disclosure. That's fine. You can label it sponsor fee. The big thing I want to make sure we see here is, again, that we can attribute it to a specific sponsor fee in the way it's labeled, and it needs to go to the sponsor organization. Please do not put Federal Home Loan Bank Topeka here. The fee is not coming to us. We're not charging a fee. So that sponsor fee is going to go to you guys as the sponsor organization. We recognize that you're granting or you're fronting the grant funds, and so it kind of works out in a little awkward way. I know that kind of comes up every once in a while, but please make sure that that sponsor fee is listed as going to you as the sponsor organization and not to us here at the Federal Home Loan Bank. We don't want that fee. So the $500 is listed here. So they charged $500. Again, you have a maximum guideline of $1,000. They charged a little bit below that in this example, which is fine. As long as it's under $1,000, that's fine with us. So we'll put the $500 sponsor fee right here. Okay. So once I have all those, I'm going to come back now to our other closing costs. The reason I do this is because the other closing costs is going to include everything that is not listed explicitly elsewhere. So not our lender fee, loan discount fees, our home buyer counseling and sponsor fee are not going to be included here. This is going to be everything else. So there's a couple quick ways to fill out this. You do not have to necessarily break this out into a bunch of different individual line items. You can see there's a lot of line items on here. I'm going to condense this down into one and kind of give it a generic label. But again, a couple ways to calculate that amount for you. One of the ways that I find easiest is to go down to page 3 here. You can see the closing costs paid at closing. And so you can take that amount, 2, and then you can add back anything that was paid prior to closing. So we'll have to add back that 99 here that we added in. And then you can subtract out all the fees that we've already accounted for in this section. So we already accounted for a $500 lender fee. We already accounted for a $500 homebuyer counseling fee. And we already accounted for a $500 sponsor fee. So once I do that, we should get the total here of all our remaining closing costs. If you would rather go through this line by line and add everything up individually, you can do that if that makes more sense. Whatever makes the most sense to you is fine. I just kind of like that quick shortcut way so that I'm not trying to type in all these numbers because I'm bound to type in a number wrong. I'm really good at that. So this is the way I do it. When I label it, I'm just going to label it something to the extent of just the general items included in here. So I'm going to say appraisal, title, premiums, maybe insurance or something like that. So this is kind of just a generic label again. We're not going to necessarily be checking this for every single little item, but just something to give us the generic idea of what you were including in that item. So that is going to have everything else for me. I will note this one again is a little strange because it has some costs paid prior to closing. Again, not a bad thing to have costs paid prior to closing. I know a lot of people don't. And so you won't have to worry about adding in back those costs paid at closing. The only costs paid prior to closing that have to be included in the feasibility workbook are the ones that are associated with these fees we have here, the lender fee, the loan discount fee, our homebuyer counseling fee, and sponsor fee. So since the amount that was paid prior to closing, before closing, was associated with the homebuyer education fee, we have to include it in the total amount of closing costs that we see that I used in my math here. So that's why you see this here. If the $99 was attributed to something like homeowners insurance, we would not need to see that amount in the feasibility workbook. So I know that's kind of a confusing line. Really, we're not worried about cost paid prior to closing unless it's associated with a fee guideline that's in one of those 4 items above. So that's why you're seeing that here. Wanted to show you at least one with that example in case you run into a scenario with cost paid prior to closing. Got a question. Would this also apply if the buyer pays for their home inspection prior to closing? So yeah, if the inspection was listed on here and it showed the costs paid prior to closing, those costs would not have to be included in the feasibility workbook since they are not associated with a fee guideline. Good questions. Thank you all for your questions. I appreciate knowing people are online. Okay. Okay, so that is our kind of our uses of funds section here in some way. We're going to move on to the next section here. The first thing it's going to ask for is our front ratio. The front ratio, again, you can use the income calculation workbook to determine your front ratio. I'm actually going to come back to the front ratio in a second because we're going to use some of the data we're entering down below here to calculate said front ratio. So I'm going to fill out the rest here and then I'll come back and talk about front ratio here in a second. So the first thing I'm going to enter in the next section here is the mortgage rate. So this is just your interest rate on page 1. So that's going to be our 4.5%. Then it's going to ask for our mortgage term in months. So our loan term is 30 years. In months, that's going to be 360 months. Okay. Then we're going to calculate our total monthly housing costs. So again, this is going to help with our front ratio calculation, trying to determine what the total monthly housing costs are versus what their income is. So again, I'm going to come back to this monthly housing cost line because it's going to be the sum of a couple of the items we enter below. So I'm going to enter these items below and then we'll sum them up to get what we need to put in line 16. So I'm going to start with our monthly taxes. Monthly taxes we can generally find on page 2. So you can see our property taxes are going to be $87.89 per month. So I'm going to enter that in here. Same thing for the monthly insurance. Going to look for our homeowner's insurance. I have $178.31 per month. So I'm going to enter that here. And then there's going to be a line for other monthly costs. This can be anything from like an HOA fee. I think that's the biggest one I see is HOA fees on a monthly basis. But if you have any other recurring monthly costs associated with the housing, those would go in this line. A lot of times when I'm looking for it, I'll look up here at page 1 and look at the total costs that I'm seeing in here. And if there's an other amount here, usually will tell me if it's that HOA or anything like that. So when I'm filling out workbooks, that's what I'm generally looking for on my end. This one does not have anything else other than taxes and insurance. So there are no other monthly housing costs here for at least the taxes, insurance, and other. So I'm going to skip this one and move down to my monthly principal and interest. My monthly principal and interest is listed right here up on page 1. We've got that at the 312.12. So I'm going to enter that in here. Oops. Okay, and then once I have those 4 lines filled out, I can figure out what my total monthly housing costs are because it's the sum of these 4 lines right here. So if I sum these up together, you can see my total. I know that number's probably really tiny for you guys, but it says 578.32. You can see that matches our number here. Please be careful with that, just making sure that sometimes this number doesn't include the other fees like HOA and things like that. So be careful with using this number right here, just in case it doesn't have some of the other fees that they may incur on a monthly basis. But the sum here should add up to what we need to put in line 16, which is our 578.32. Okay. So now that we have this information, I'm going to back up and do our front ratio real quick and talk about that before we finish out the remaining information in the feasibility workbook. So the front ratio, when we're looking at our income calculation workbook, this is where you'll calculate your front ratio, is on the household summary tab here. So you can see I already entered the information here just to make it a little bit simpler. But this is the same information we just entered in the feasibility workbook. So if I put these side by side, you'll see our principal and interest of 312.12, taxes 87.89, insurance 178.31, and other was 0. So I just stuck a 0 in there. And it will automatically calculate out what their front ratio is based on the income in the workbook. So you can go ahead and transfer that front ratio number here over to the feasibility workbook. All right. So from this point, I should be done with my income calculation workbook. So I'm going to close that so we've got more screen space here. Nope, sorry. That shouldn't have gone full screen. There we go. Okay, last few pieces of information in the workbook here. We're getting close to the end, I promise. The mortgage loan amount. So the loan amount, of course, can be found on page 1 or in a couple of other different places. So the 61.6 is what's going to go here. See some red starting to go away. That's a good thing. Then the last thing we need to do is put in any other sorts of sources of funds that are going to be helping pay for the home apart from the loan itself, of course. So if there's an owner down payment, when we're talking about owner down payment, that is going to be, of course, if there's any deposit listed here in section L, that would go in here. This one doesn't have a deposit specifically, but it does have cash to close from the borrower. So we do include this cash to close as owner down payment. So the 2745.15 down here at the bottom, that's going to go into here. No, see, this is me not being good at typing. All right. That's going to go into here. The other thing that's going to go into here is any costs paid prior to closing that we included in our calculations up above. So I mentioned earlier, this is going to be any costs paid prior to closing that are attributed to specific AHP fees. So the homebuyer education fee is a fee guideline. We did include the full 500 up here, so I need to make sure that I include the amount that the homebuyer paid prior to closing, and they paid $99. So we're going to stick that in here. All right, so that's going to be all of our owner down payment as we would define it here at the bank for this one. So I'm going to go ahead and set that calculation there. Then we're going to put in all of our other sources. So this is going to be coming to section L here. We're going to be looking through all of our other sources of funds that are at play here and making sure we total them all up here. Again, we know there's one line, so you can kind of put a generic description over here of all the line items that are going to be happening here. But then we'll sum them all up into this line here. So you can see we have the AHP funds. When you are labeling the AHP grant, please make sure it's specifically labeled as FHLB AHP grant or AHP grant or something like that so we can directly attribute it to our AHP funds. If you just put the word grant, we don't know if that's us or if that's somebody else. So please make sure it's explicit and saying that it's the AHP funds in some form. So what's here is acceptable, just AHP grant would be totally fine. So we have an AHP grant of $6,000 on this one. This is the amount including all those fees up above. So that $6,000 is the total paid for with AHP. You do not put that in the other sources section. You can see there's a total AHP gap that's calculating at the bottom. We haven't entered all our sources, so that's why the number's wrong right now. But that's where in a couple different places, actually, you can see it in all three places here. You'll see that 6,000 should show up here at the end of the day. That's how we know we've done all our math right and entered our numbers right, is that the AHP grant that shows up here should match what's in our closing disclosure. So we are going to skip the AHP grant and put in everything else. So they received a third-party grant. This could be from any sort of organization. If you have a member that donated some funds to them, if you have gift funds, somebody mentioned gift funds earlier. We may see gift funds show up here. So that's one thing. So this one just generically has third-party grant name just to protect, again, sensitive information. So I entered just a generic name here to cover that. So they received $5,000 in a third-party grant. We have some title policy adjustment. The seller carryback, we can see the matching seller carryback on the seller side. And then we've got the taxes and assessments for the second half of the year. So you can add all of these up together in this line. And then again, we're just going to put kind of a generic descriptor on it to describe what we're throwing in here. So we got the 7,500, we got the 375. And we got the 527. All right. Whoop. Scroll down on me here. And then again, going to put in a generic description. So we'll say third-party grant, title, taxes, expense, seller. So again, just generic title there to get us something in that box. So we at least know what you're shooting for there. So once I put all that in, you can see my AHP gap per unit is the $6,000 in the workbook. So I know I've done my math right here because my AHP gap is showing up as the amount that we gave them in the grant. So that's what you're wanting to see there. Got a question about ground lease fees. Where those should be listed in the closing disclosure. Kind of up to you. Sometimes I know we don't necessarily see them explicitly listed in the closing disclosure, but we do need to know about the ground lease fee ground lease fee, if there is one and you're not listing it in the closing disclosure, because we need to include it in the monthly housing cost. So at that point, we would want to see you provide the actual agreement, and you can upload that as a miscellaneous document within the the disbursement itself. I'll show you where that's located here in a little bit. But otherwise, it's kind of up to you where if you would like to include that in the closing disclosure, where you would put that from your standpoint. But if it is not included, please at least make sure you give us a copy of that ground lease so that we know what the fee is to include in our front ratio calculation. Okay. So that is our feasibility workbook. Again, I know a lot of information there. Once you do it a few times, you'll get the swing of it pretty quick, I promise. If you have any questions, again, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Throw them in the chat while you're on the call here, and we'll talk about it. Otherwise, I'm going to keep moving forward a little bit here. Got a question about first-time home buyers. So someone has talked about the turnkey program. So if you've utilized our turnkey programs before, it is a down payment assistance program that's through a different section of our of the bank here. The turnkey program for certain products within that suite, the home buyers are required to be first-time home buyers to utilize the turnkey funds. That requirement does not apply to AHP. So AHP home buyers do not have to be first-time home buyers to qualify for the funds. So thank you for asking about that. I know the income calculation guide does reference both turnkey and AHP, so sometimes that can get mixed up. The AHP program does not require that the home buyer is a first-time home buyer. Good question. Okay. All right. I think I got all the questions so far. Feel free to keep adding them as I'm talking here. I'm going to go ahead and close all of this out. And we'll keep moving forward with our documentation here. So the last two documents on here, the first one is the final closing disclosure. So of course, just showed you closing disclosure. Please provide a final copy of the closing disclosure with your disbursement request. I'll show you where that gets uploaded. And then the last document in this list is the recorded real estate retention agreement. So we do require that a real estate retention agreement be filed for each closing. The real estate retention agreement template is on our public website. I'll show you where that's at, but I'll open it just real quick so you at least get a glance of it during training here. So this is the real estate retention agreement. We place a 5-year lien on all of the properties. And this is forgivable over that 5 years. So it gets prorated. That's the word I'm looking for there. Gets prorated over the 5 years. So if the home buyer were to sell the home within the next 5 years after they purchase it, they would only owe a certain portion of the grant back. That's reduced on a prorated basis based on the amount of time that has elapsed. Once the 5 years are up, the grant is fully forgiven and they can release this lien. And there is a spot on our website to help get that release done. But otherwise, real estate retention agreement here, nothing too scary or different. Just general information about who the member is, who the home buyer is, the amount of the grant, where the property is located, the legal description of the property, all that good stuff. So please make sure that one of these gets filled out, executed, notarized, and recorded with the county. We do want to make sure that you provide the recorded copy to us. It does not have to be the original. You do not need to send the original to us. We will take just a copy of it via virtual submission. So it does not have to be the original. Okay. So that gets us through our documentation checklist here. So that's all your documents that are needed. Got a good question. Is there a different retention agreement necessary for land trusts? Yes. So the agreement that I just showed you is for kind of just your traditional purchase, for lack of a better way to say it. If you are a land trust or the home being purchased is on land trust land, please reach out to us. There is a separate retention agreement that we utilize. So shoot me an email if you fall into that category, and I will get you that retention agreement. We don't post it on our public website because we don't want people to mix them up and accidentally use the wrong one. So if you do fall into that category of utilizing a land trust, please let me know. I'm happy to get you the retention agreement that is applicable to those homes. Okay. Couple last things just about documentation in general. A household, so this is actually listed in Exhibit B of the implementation plan, but we re-emphasize it here. We used to have more issues with this. We've seen a general compliance with this lately, so I'm not too worried about it. But just a reminder, a household can receive up to $250 in cash back at closing, but no more than that. If they receive more than $250 in cash back at closing, we may reduce the grant amount by the amount that exceeds past $250. This is a regulatory requirement from our federal regulators. They ask us to put a limit on the amount that they receive in cash back to make sure the funds just aren't coming out in cash, the AHP funds. So that is regulatory. So please make sure to follow that guideline. Only eligible rehabilitation expenses paid outside closing will be reimbursed. If there are any sort of rehabilitation expenses listed on the closing disclosure, that is okay, but you will need to provide documentation to us of what those repairs were, the invoices, things like that, to verify the amount and what the costs were, so that we can verify that those costs are AHP eligible. If there are enough other AHP eligible closing costs to utilize the full AHP cost without them going towards the rehabilitation expenses, that we may not require that documentation be provided. But I recommend just always having it on hand in the case that rehabilitation work was done, just in case we do need to request that to verify that the rehabilitation expenses were AHP eligible. Third thing on here, if the member of the project, meaning the member bank, when we're talking about member, if the member bank on your project is selling the property or holds the current mortgage or lien, so they own the property currently for any reason, we will need a copy of an appraisal submitted. This is pretty rare, so we don't see this a whole lot. If you do think you fall into that circumstance and may need an appraisal, please let us know, and we're happy to figure that out for you if that's necessary. Okay, another reminder. I know we've already seen this 2 or 3 times, but non-occupying co-owners and co-borrowers are not allowed. Please keep that in mind. We do put this in here a lot because we do run into this issue a lot. So please make sure there's no non-occupying co-owners or co-borrowers. The last note on this screen is that all documentation needs to be dated after AHP project award. This is really important for those people or organizations that have had prior grants with us. If you have had prior grants or just in general have qualified households prior to when the AHP award, you are notified of your AHP award, we can't take any documentation dated prior to that. So income documents, closings, of course, if you closed prior to being awarded, things of that form, scoring documentation, all of that. So your AHP project award date again was December 19th of 2025. So here about a month and a half ago. So in essence, what we're getting at there is that we're not sure we wouldn't be able to qualify a household for our program if you didn't have a grant in hand yet to qualify them for. So again, generally not too big of a deal for our new sponsors that have not done a project with us before. But if you have done one with us before and you're kind of running from one grant straight into the next grant, please make sure all your documentation is dated correctly if you are going to submit the household under your 2025 grant. Oops, here we go. All right, so that covers documentation. So gotten through about half our content here. We're moving along pretty good. The next thing I want to talk about is our public website. This will be a pretty quick one. This slide just has the different sections of our website and the resources that you can find within each section. I'm going to actually take you to the public website and show you where all this information is, but just for your reference, when you go back to look at your slides, or if you're trying to look for something specific and just can't find it, you're welcome to refer back to these slides and see if I've got it listed on here, where it's located and where you may be able to find the form or guide that you're looking for. So again, I'm going to take you to the actual website here and give you a little bit of a tour. So this is our main landing page for the AHP program. If you have not seen this page, I definitely recommend bookmarking it. You will utilize this website a lot because it has all of our forms on it. We periodically update those forms, so you'll want to make sure that you're constantly grabbing the newest version that we have. So please, yeah, go ahead and bookmark this if you haven't already. This is a website that you'll definitely use a lot if you're involved in the disbursement request process. So all the different screen names that were shown in my slides are buttons that are over here on the left-hand side. There are a couple of them that aren't included in the slide specifically just because they're not relevant to disbursement necessarily. But nonetheless, you can click through those on here if you'd like in your free time to just kind of peruse what we've got going on. Again, just going to give a high-level overview and then stop and talk about some forms and things like that. So the first thing that's on our website here is just general information about the fund. So the amount that we've provided the past 2 years, you can see all of our recipients for the past decade plus a couple years. So if you're curious just to see who we funded over the course of time, you're welcome to grab those PDFs here and look through those. The next section is our application section. If you do want to apply for another grant here in the future, we run this grant on a yearly basis. You do not necessarily have to have finished the project that you are currently working on to be able to apply for another grant. You can run 2 grants simultaneously if you would like and think you are able to handle multiple at one time. The one caveat I'll put to that is that there was a change made to the 2026 implementation plan. If you look in our milestones section, which I believe is in Exhibit B, if I'm correct, it's A or B, then you'll see that there are requirements for the amount of funding you have to have utilized off the grants that you already have in order to be eligible to apply again. So please make sure you check out Exhibit B for those requirements in the milestone section if you do decide to run multiple grants simultaneously and apply in a consecutive year. So you'll see information pop up here for the 26th round here shortly. Most of this is still from 25, but we're getting stuff off the ground and we'll really start moving here in the next month to get new forms and things up. But the big section you'll want to know is the disbursement section, as well as a few following it. So the disbursement section here, you'll want to go to the owner occupied button since you're an owner occupied down payment assistance project. When you go into here, you'll find the disbursement user guide. This user guide goes step by step with wonderful pictures through how to submit a disbursement request in AHP Online. I am going to do it live here and show you how to do it via this tutorial online. But if you need a guide or something like that, if you like guides and would rather see it on paper, you are welcome to grab this guide at any point in time, and it will walk you through how to submit a disbursement request in AHP Online. The other thing in this section is our documentation checklist. So had that in my slides, mentioned that I pulled it from the public website. This is where it came from. When you're looking through this list, you want to make sure that you grab anything that has a purchase projects label next to it, or anything that doesn't have a label at all. So income calculation workbook isn't specifically labeled, feasibility workbook, income verification. The main thing that you need to know is that you can ignore anything that says rehab projects. That, of course, is explicitly related to our rehabilitation projects and does not apply to down payment assistance. So look for anything with a purchase projects label or no label at all, or you can grab my slides and refer back to those if you would like. The remaining information on this slide is regarding deadlines and extensions. We covered this earlier in our implementation plan highlights, so I'm going to go ahead and skip this and head back to the main website. Go back to our disbursement section here. So we covered disbursement here. Now we're going to move into monitoring. Monitoring is all those reporting requirements I talked about. So the first thing you're going to find are links to the semi-annual progress report or SAPR user guides. These are those progress reports that are due each January and July that we talked about earlier. You'll click the owner occupied button and that will download a user guide for you that will walk you step by step through how to fill out your SAPR when you reach that point in July. So got a little bit of time, but this is where that guide is located when you get to that point. The other thing here is for that project completion report, way down at the end of the line when you're done with your project, you can find a guide underneath the owner occupied button here that will take you step by step as well through how to submit the project completion report. Okay, then we're going to get to our resources section. The resources and forms section is probably where you're going to find yourself the most when you come to here. So the first thing in the resources section is a link to AHP Online itself. So if you're ready to submit a disbursement, you can come grab this link or you can bookmark AHP Online itself as well. The other thing that's available here is a proof point link. If you've received or worked with us on prior grants, you may have noticed there used to be a proof point button over here in this left-hand column as its separate tab. We have removed that and put it over here. What proof point is it's our secure email system. So if you are needing to send us any sort of documentation with personally identifiable information, you can send it through Proofpoint. This is commonly like income documents, things like that. Anything that's got sensitive information, we want to make sure that we protect that. If you do not already have a Proofpoint account, you will need to email us and we will send you a link to get signed up. If you go through here, it's not going to let you sign up. So for your initial sign up, please shoot us an email, shoot me an email or your analyst an email, and we'll get you a link to get signed up. Once you are signed up, you can then use this link here to log back in whenever you need to send us one of those secure emails. Okay. Next section is our regulations and plans. Talked about our implementation plan. We covered highlights in our training today. If you'd like to see the full document and review it, see all those policies and rules regarding our program, you can see that whole document here and download a copy of that. The other thing you can look at is our regulations. This is a link to our federal regulations, which is where a lot of the policies and things like that from our implementation plan come from. So if you would like to view that and understand some of our regulatory requirements, you're welcome to take a look at that as well. Next is the income limits section. So the first thing is the income calculation guide. This is located in two different places on our website. This is one of them. I'll show you where the other one is in a second. This is that guide you'll want to read if you're going to be doing income calculations. Talks about the documentation options as well as how to fill out the income calculation workbook. So please make sure to grab that guide, check that out and review it if you will be doing income calculations on behalf of your organization. The other thing in this section is the income limits themselves. So the USDA income limits we publish on our website. That's what this document is. It's an Excel spreadsheet sorted by state and county. So you can look up the specific county the property is located in, and then it is sorted out by AMI category and lists the maximum threshold for each AMI category and household size. These income limits are updated on a yearly basis, usually sometime in the late summer is when the USDA releases their income limits. It changes a little bit every year, but we will notify you via email when we do update our income limits. We will again automatically insert those into our income calculation workbook and all our other forms so that you can continue utilizing those forms. And you don't have to use this income limits document if you don't want to. It's more of just a resource. The income workbook will automatically calculate your AMI for you utilizing the applicable income limits as you are working with it. Okay, the next section is the tools section. This is where we have our registration user guide. So if you have anybody that needs to sign up for AHP Online, this is the guide that will take them through the steps to do so. So feel free to grab that guide to help get people signed up if needed. If you need to put new contacts on your project, please let us know. You can have a maximum of 2 sponsor contacts on the project at any given time that are able to access AHP Online. So just keep that in mind. If you need to change those contacts at any point, please let us know and we're more than happy to help you out with that. Okay, last thing in the tools is our scoring commitment user guide. So I showed you this user guide earlier, talks about the documentation options for each scoring commitment that you may have on your project, sorted in alphabetical order. Again, searchable document, you can look through that, check out what options you have for each of those scoring commitments in your agreement. Then the last thing that's in this resources section is information on homebuyer education. We would have checked if you have the homebuyer education scoring commitment, we would have checked an application to make sure the provider that you're intending to use does meet the standards or is certified by one of the 4 agencies that's listed in this checklist here. You can change the organization or use a couple different organizations if you want to for homebuyer education, but any homebuyer education provider that you do utilize needs to be certified by one of the providers that's listed right here. There are links to the websites for each of these providers, so feel free to grab those, look up your organization that you're wanting to utilize, and see if they qualify for our program and the uses or to meet the scoring requirements of our program. Okay, then we get to forms. So we already went through our forms, but this is where you can find the templates. So you will be focused on this owner-occupied disbursement form section. There'll be some extra forms down here for rental projects, things like that. You don't need those. You just need what's in this owner-occupied disbursement form section right here at the top. The first thing is the income calculation workbook. You can see we just recently revised it and published a new copy this week. So please make sure to utilize the most recent version. Again, we don't recommend saving these documents on your personal computer because we do update them periodically to make sure that we're utilizing the most recent limits or fixing any sort of errors that might have been identified, things of that form. So please make sure you grab the most recent version every time you go to qualify somebody so that you know you're using the most fresh template per se. So that's where your income calculation workbook is located. Also here regarding income is the zero income certification, our profit and loss template, and our verification of employment or VOE template. The income calculation guide will instruct you on when to use these forms if applicable, but this is where you would grab those forms if you do need them. So those are all attributed to income there. The next 2 forms here are related specifically to rehab, the final cost certification and third-party inspection, so you can ignore those. You do not need either of the rehab forms listed here since you all are down payment assistance projects, but you do need the real estate retention agreement. So this is that lien on the property, pulled open a copy of that earlier. This is where the template is located. Again, if you are working with a land trust, please reach out to me and I'd be happy to send you a copy of the land trust retention agreement. That one is slightly different. But for all other projects, you're going to utilize the template that's available here on the website. All right, last thing is going to be the feasibility workbooks. So you'll notice that there are 5 different workbooks on the website. Please make sure that you always use the 2025 projects feasibility workbook, assuming you're online here for a 2025 project award. You want to make sure you're using the workbook that aligns with the year that you were awarded your funds. So even next year, we're going to release a 2026 workbook, and then we'll do 27, 28, all that good stuff. You will always use the one that is labeled 2025 projects since that was the year that you were awarded your funds. That makes sure that we're using the correct guidelines from the applicable implementation plan, all of that good stuff. AHP Online will not allow you to upload a workbook that is for the wrong year. So please make sure you grab the right one. Otherwise, AHP Online is going to give you an error when you try to upload it. So 2025, make sure you grab that one. All right, so that covers our forms here. The remainder of this is for our rental projects. Then we get to our income calculation training section. So again, another link to the income calculation guide is down here. There's 2 of them on the website. This also has all the videos I was talking about earlier. So if you'd like video tutorials on how to fill out the income calculation workbook or ICW, we like our acronyms around here. You'll notice that pretty quickly. So if I ever say an acronym or someone emails you an acronym and you have no idea what we're talking about, please feel free to let us know. Don't let us leave you in the dark there. So ICW is income calculation workbook. But you can see all the different types of income, and those will be video tutorials for you of how to utilize the different types of income to fill out the workbook. Okay. Getting close to the end of the website here. Webinar recordings. This is a new section. So you'll see the webinar we're doing today, as well as the one that I just did on Tuesday. That's the one that you're seeing on here right now. I did a recording for the owner-occupied rehabilitation projects on Tuesday, so that recording is already up along with the presentation slides. Here in the next 24 to 48 hours, you should see a nice new link appear here for both the recording of this presentation as well as a copy of the slides that I am going through or went through today. So be looking for that here in the next day or two. Those should hopefully go up for you so you can reference back to them. All right, the last section on here is this request for repayment quote. Again, if you have somebody that's reached the end of their retention period on their retention agreements, that end of that 5-year period, or somebody that's selling the home and needs to have the lien released and potentially repay a portion of the grant, this is the link that they would utilize to get a quote for that repayment or to get the release if it's ready to just be fully released. All right, that is the website. So let me check here for questions real quick. So I got one. Is it acceptable to include in the real estate contract the AHP funds as long as those contracts are after the award date? That one, I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm sure it's fine. It sounds like it's not really going to be an issue. So my quick answer is yes. I believe that's just fine. I'll double check though with our management team to make sure I'm not giving you wrong information there. And I'll send that in my email to you that has the slides and things like that tomorrow morning. So I'll make sure I write that down and get you a solid answer. But for the moment, I believe yes, that's okay. Okay. I don't think I see any other questions at the moment. So with that, again, you're still welcome to throw questions in as you think of them. With that, though, I'm going to move into the last section of our training here, which is going to be going into AHP Online and showing you an actual example of how to submit a disbursement. So we will do that. We'll probably finish a little bit early here, unless you guys have questions, of course. I'm happy to sit here, got questions, but I'm going to go ahead into AHP Online. The way to get into AHP Online, again, there's multiple links throughout the website. I kind of just look for the first one and click on it. When you get to here, again, you can't bookmark this page. So you can just go straight here instead of going to the public website. Please make sure, assuming that you are a sponsor organization, that you click sponsor sign in when you go here. The member sign in is for your member bank. So unless you are a part of the member bank, if you try to use the member sign in, it'll tell you that your login credentials are invalid. So please make sure you're signing in as a sponsor, assuming that you are part of the sponsor agency and not the member bank. Okay, I'm going to do something a little funny here. I'm going to go into our test environment. I don't want to break the actual system itself with whatever I do today. So I'm going to go into our test environment. If you'll just excuse my login here for a minute. This looks a little funny. And it's going to think. Sometimes it spins a little bit. So every once in a while, it just needs an extra moment to think. All right. It's really thinking today. I can even hear my computer fan turning on. It's really got to work for it. Here we go. Okay, apologies. So, this is our testing environment again, but it looks identical to what you should see when you log into AHP Online, except of course you'll see your projects instead of all the random test projects that we've got inserted in here. So you'll see, again, the name of your project and your project number show up when you log in. If you see nothing when you log in at the moment, that is normal if you logged in today. We have not released the 2025 projects into the actual system quite yet, so you are not able to view your project quite yet. We are planning to have them up by the end of next week. So you should see your project appear sometime here in the next week, week and a half or so. Once it does appear in AHP Online, you are welcome to start submitting disbursements whenever you're ready. So just something to keep in mind. Again, hoping to get that up here in the next week and a half. Apologies for the delay. We will get that up here shortly. So we're going to use a test project that I've got here. To go into your project, you just click the project number. And then it's going to take you to your project summary. So on this, you'll see your project name, you'll see the project number, some status information, what your sponsor name is, what your member name is for your member bank, just general information across the board. Some other information that is also helpful that's on here. If you go to the project dropdown, you'll see this project profile button. The profile has just some additional information about your project, like the total amount of money you were awarded, what your targeting requirements are, those AMI category requirements you'll see on the project profile, as well as just some other little tidbits of information about your application and project. Then there's your sponsor and member information. This will tell you who is selected as a sponsor and member contact on your project. You do have the ability, if you are selected as a sponsor on the project and can log into it like I'm doing right now, you can change the sponsor and member contacts if you need to do so. If you are unsure how to do that or would like some help with it, though, we are more than happy to help on our end, and we can also switch those contacts from our side. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you're unsure how to get there and make those changes happen. Okay, then we have our conditions and exceptions. Right now, the vast majority of projects should not have any conditions or exceptions. So these screens are going to be blank. If you do receive any exceptions to policy in the future, though, we will enter those in the system and you will see those appear on the exceptions screen. But again, for the moment, these screens are more than likely blank. So nothing exciting there. Documentation required is something that we use for project completion reporting, so nothing you need to do with that for the moment. And then the modification screen. Again, this screen will be blank for your project since we have not modified any projects at the moment. But if you do have any modifications to scoring commitments in the future, you'll be able to view those here. I'm going to come back to the disbursement section here in a second. I'm going to go to monitoring. So monitoring, this is where you're going to find your semi-annual progress reports when it does come to that. So when you get that automated email in July telling you have a SAPR due, this is where you'll go in the system to access that report and complete it. The last one is our extensions. If you do need an extension to a deadline, we'll have already had a conversation with you ahead of time. Usually we like to talk about those things via phone or email before we actually have you submit any extensions in the system, and we will instruct you if you do need to submit an extension in the system. There is a specific user guide for that as well. But again, if that is something that is necessary, we will help instruct you on how to do that when that time comes. Okay, so we're going to go to disbursement today, since that is what we're focused on. I'm going to go to the disbursement home screen to start. Man, it's given us some good time to spin here today. I apologize. Here we go. Oh, it is not wanting to participate, is it? Apologize. Let me try to reload this here. I'm going to go into this one. This one was working earlier. Here we go. Okay. So this is what your disbursement home screen is going to look like. You'll have your current approved award amount. So this will be the total amount of grant funds you were awarded. It'll have some data on the amount that we have funded to you. So that has already gone out the door to you all. The amount that's within pending disbursement requests, so ones that are under review or that you've initiated in the system and haven't submitted yet. Any deobligations or withdrawals. If we do need to deobligate money, maybe you guys realize you're not going to utilize all the funds or something like that. Again, we'll have many conversations. We're not just going to de-obligate randomly. That'll be a conversation before that ever goes through in the system. But you'd see that here if that was necessary. And then it'll have your available amount remaining. So system has some ways to keep track of how much money you've got left, what you got going on. So feel free to reference that if you would like some solid numbers on that. Then you're going to see right now this says that there are no disbursement requests found here at the bottom. As you initiate disbursements, you'll see them start populating in this disbursement request section. And I'll show you that once we've initiated one and what that looks like. This is the section where you would, if you started working on a disbursement request and then decided to come back and work on it again some more later, this is where you'd find that disbursement and be able to click back in and start working on your disbursement request again. So again, show you that here in a little bit, but for now, we're going to initiate a brand new disbursement and talk about it start to end. So there's two ways to initiate a disbursement request. You can click this request disbursement button right here, or you can go to the disbursement dropdown and click request disbursement. They do the exact same thing. Doesn't matter which one you pick. So we're going to click this one right here and we will get rolling. All right. So once we have done that, the disbursement initiation screen is going to come up. The first thing that we need to enter is the amount of AHP grant funds that you're requesting reimbursement for. So if you recall off of our closing disclosure earlier, the AHP grant funds totaled $6,000 on the closing disclosure. So we are going to put the $6,000 that we're requesting reimbursement for in this first line. Then it's going to ask you what the funds are utilized for. Oh, oh boy. Sorry. Give me 1 second. I just realized we're in the wrong project type here. This is not what we want. Let's do a take two. Recognize that it was telling me that it was a rehabilitation project. All right, take two. I apologize. So the disbursement initiation screen, we're typing in the amount of AHP funds that we need. Then there's going to be the uses of funds section. So it's going to ask you to select the what you're utilizing the funds for. All of you should have this assistance with acquisition costs box. This is probably going to be the ones that you are selecting. If it has a asterisk next to it, that is a required field. So it's a piece of information that you are required to fill out to be able to submit the disbursement request. So just keep that in mind. Types of assistance also has a little asterisk. You all will have an extra category down here. Again, apologize the restraints of the test system here. It'll have something similar to assistance with acquisition costs, and it will have potentially this home ownership counseling or home buyer counseling box if you have the home buyer counseling commitment. So for this one, we're going to select it because we do have to select something to get this to save for us. But this will only be selected if the household took the class and there is a fee being charged. So this is just telling us, yes, we're using some of the AHP funds to pay for the home buyer counseling course. Then it's going to say requested funds will be dispersed to, and mine says test customer to. This is where your member bank name will be listed. So you'll see some see Capital Federal or FNBO or whoever it may be. The member bank name will show up there. What that's indicating is that us at the Federal Home Loan Bank, when we approve a disbursement request, we will transfer the funds to your member bank. Then from that standpoint, you as the sponsor can coordinate with your member bank to decide how you would like to receive those funds from the member, whether you have an account with them you want it deposited into, maybe you have a line of credit you want it applied down to that they have on hand. Whatever you want to do from there is up to you and your member. We just disperse it out to the member, and then you can coordinate with them however you would like to receive those funds. Okay. Then it's going to ask for the closing date, rehabilitation completion dates related to rehab projects. So closing dates, what's applicable here. This is going to be the date at the top of our closing disclosure. So if we look back at our closing disclosure, from earlier, you'll see our closing date was January 1st of 2026. So that is the date that we need to enter in AHP Online. So we got January 1st. Please make sure this matches your closing disclosure. If not, then our analysts will be going in and making changes and letting you know. Okay, then the last required question is asking if this is the final disbursement request for the project. Of course, if this is not the very last disbursement that you're going to submit on this project, you're going to be clicking no every time. I will say if you do accidentally click no on the last disbursement request out of habit, it's not a big deal. We can get that flipped over and changed for you. But for the most part, again, going to be answering no until you hit that very last disbursement. The last section on here is disbursement request comments. This is not a required field, and most people generally leave it blank. So you do not have to put anything in here. Most people don't. But if there is any information you would like your analyst here at the Federal Home Loan Bank to know, but it's not included in any of the documents or things of that form that you're working through, you can put that in here so that they can see it. All right, once we have all of our required information filled out, we're going to click Submit. And here we go. Assuming that I've entered everything and filled out all the required fields, it's going to assign a 5-digit disbursement request number to our disbursement. This number is just something to keep in mind. Our analyst, when they email you, they may refer to your disbursement by this number instead of the home buyer name or something like that to protect information, stuff like that. So if you ever see them refer to a disbursement request by a 5-digit number, that's what they're referring to. So just something to keep in mind, and it will be tagged onto all the information that you see in AHP Online so that you know what they're talking about. Okay, so from here we're going to click Continue, and it's going to take us to or it's going to throw an error for me. That's not what I want. Sorry, guys, this was working when I tested it this morning. Nope. Apologies. Give me 1 second here. We're gonna try and get this to cooperate. So 35. Okay. Well, maybe this screen is not going to work for me. Okay. I am going to utilize a rehabilitation project. The screens are nearly identical across the board. So I will point out any differences that occur, but really we shouldn't see. Oh, this one's showing me down payment assistance. Don't we love computers? Okay, this is not going to cooperate today. All right, we're going to use a separate system. I apologize for the technical difficulties here. While this is loading, I have a test project I can utilize for you also. Our other test system actually utilizes real projects, so I can see your guys' real projects in a test environment. So I have a test project I can utilize that is rehabilitation. If you would like to see an acquisition project, again, the screens are very similar, so we can use rehabilitation. But I would have you to utilize one of your guys' projects if you'd like to see one that's acquisition specifically, but don't want to do that without your permission, of course. So let me see and make sure this is working. Okay. Apologies again. Let me click through here. Okay, so here's what we'll do. Appreciate your flexibility with me as we're working through this. Um, we're going to utilize this project. Our friends at Nebraska Housing Developers were kind enough to allow me to utilize their project as an example during our rehabilitation presentation on Tuesday. So this is their project. These screens for down payment assistance projects are identical. There's a few minor differences, and I will point those out specifically, but it won't impact the way that you view these disbursements or what you upload for the most part, things like that. So I'll tell you what those differences are as we're working through. But again, the steps, about 95% of the steps are going to be exactly the same. So we'll go ahead and utilize this one just so again you can see it. Sorry for the hiccup again. So, assuming that the continue button would have worked earlier, like I was hoping for, you would come to this screen right here, which is our disbursement request home screen. So from here, you'll see we have a green check mark already on amount requested and uses of funds. That's that very first screen that I filled out. So it is already done, gave us a green check mark. Everything else has red X's. So we need to make sure we go through and fill these out. We want to make sure that we have green check marks across the board before we can click approve on this. If we do not have green check marks across the board, it will not allow us to submit the disbursement request. So please just keep that in mind. You do not have to go through the screens in order if you don't want to. I'm going to go through them in order today just for the sake of clarity, but feel free to work through these in whatever order works best for you as you receive documentation, things like that. There are a few screens that will require you to fill out a prior screen before you can fill it out. Things like household income will require you to fill out the site selection screen before it will let you upload your income workbook. That's because it does a double check on what county the property is located in. So there's little things like that, but for the most part, you could go into import spreadsheet right out the gate, upload a feasibility workbook first, and it would allow you to do that. So that's what's going on here. Again, I'm going to go through these in order for the sake of clarity today, making sure to point out any differences that you may see between a rehab versus a down payment assistance. So I'm going to start with the site selection screen. You can get to it by clicking the blue buttons over here or going to the drop down at the top or going to site selection. Again, either one does the same exact thing. So we'll go to site selection. The site selection screen functions exactly the same between rehab and down payment assistance. So this is the same thing that you will see. The sites here, you can see that I have put in a few test sites. I created some test disbursements a few days ago for rehabilitation training. So you're seeing some properties that are already listed here. This is the screen where you're going to see as you create more properties or create more disbursements, you're going to see this list of properties grow. You'll also see a site that has a green check mark next to it, indicating it's the central site. This is most likely the office space that you utilized in your AHP application as a placeholder because we recognize that you may not know what households you'd be helping yet. Most people don't. So you didn't know what homes belonged in your disbursement site selection. So we put in that office space as a placeholder, so you may see that there. But again, as you create disbursements, you'll see more and more addresses show up here. So every time you come in here, you're going to need to create a new address to associate to this disbursement request. So we're going to work on a different site. So we're going to add a disbursement site. And then once we get to here, there's going to be some information here at the top regarding whether site is known, state stuff, county stuff, things like that. You do not need to change any of this information, even if the state isn't applicable to whatever property that you're working with. You don't need to change this. You can just let it be. What you do need to do is go down to this Add Known Sites button. So from here, you'll see this box show up here at the bottom, and it's going to ask you to fill out some information regarding the property that's being purchased. So the first thing you're going to do is enter an address here. So we're going to enter, you can see I used this address earlier, but It'll let me do it twice. This is the address of our office here at the Federal Home Loan Bank of Topeka. You're more than welcome to come visit us if you'd like to come see the office or come say hi. So that's our address here. Our zip code is you'll want to make sure that you have the zip code with the zip +4. If you do not know what the +4 is on your property, there is a tool on the USPS website that will tell you what the +4 is. So for this, I do know for the property here, it's 2448. Again, though, I know that's a pretty uncommon piece of information to know. So go ahead, grab the United States Postal Service website. They have an address lookup tool that will help you figure out what that +4 is. Now, once you've entered that information, you'll click Look Up, and it will automatically populate the city, county, state, all that good stuff. So you do not need to enter the city and county and all that in address line 2. Address line 2 is strictly just if there's an apartment number, a condo number, whatever that may be. All the state and all that populate over here. Okay, information here at the bottom. We have the number of units. You are always going to be working with one home, so you will always enter 1. Then we come to information on the appraisal date and the appraised value. There's no asterisk next to us, so they are not required pieces of information. The only time you need an appraisal again is if the member bank owns the property and is selling it. So assuming that that's not the case, which again is very uncommon, you can leave the appraisal date, the appraised value, and then this upload box here at the bottom for the appraisal blank. You do not need to put anything in here. There's also some of these nice little tools. So you can see little question marks if you do need additional information, things like that. Acquisition price, you can put in the amount of the loan here for the acquisition price. For this one, we had the $77,000 sale price, so I can stick that in here. Is the site donated? If you do have a donated property for any reason, you can click donated here. If the property is not donated, then you'll just click not applicable. So for this one, we'll say not applicable. Is the site rural? This is defined by the USDA. It is one of the scoring options that you may have committed to in the application. I will note, though, there's a couple things here that are related to scoring commitments, but this is not where we're checking for the scoring commitments. That's a separate screen, which we'll cover here in a little bit. So you still want to, of course, answer these questions, but these are for reporting purposes and statistical purposes to our regulator. They just like to have statistics on the properties that are receiving our funds. So that's what all of this information is for down here. So just keep that in mind. You'll still want to make sure you select commitments like rural or federally declared disaster area, things like that on the scoring commitment screen. This is not where we will be checking for those things. So you can answer this as applicable. Is the site rural? We're going to say no, considering our office here is not in a rural area. Targeted area, again, there's federally declared disaster area, HUD difficult development area. You may have one of these as a scoring commitment. Again, you are welcome to select that here for reporting purposes, but the scoring commitment itself will be accounted for on a different screen. So I'm going to click not applicable since we do not fall into any of those three. Is the property on native trust land or located in a land trust? I know we have some friends here that are a land trust organization, so feel free to answer these questions as applicable. We, of course, our bank office is a no on both of these, but if you are in a land trust, go ahead and click yes. There's nothing special you need to upload or do. Again, this is just for statistical purposes, so it's just informational. So nothing else you need to provide, just answer yes or no as applicable. Property in foreclosure, REO, or short sale. Of course, we're hoping this is not applicable, but nonetheless, there's those options there if it is in foreclosure or anything like that. Single dwelling, or sorry, excuse me, dwelling type, you guys will be selecting single family every time since we work with single family properties for our owner-occupied projects. The last question here is asking if there's any relationship or conflict of interest between the seller of the property and the sponsor, owner, or member of the development team. This is getting at that question, really, that's asking if the member owns the property. That's the biggest thing here. So if the member owns the property, that's where you'd be answering this yes, and then uploading the documentation as applicable. So we're going to say no to this one. And then, sorry, let me test something real quick. I'm trying to remember. Apologies. So I noticed the asterisk is showing up here for the appraisal. Uh, I think this may be a rehabilitation project issue. So um, if you try to click the update site right now, it's going to give us an error for the appraisal. If you get an asterisk here and you do not need an appraisal, meaning the member does not own the property, you can upload just kind of a blank document here saying that no appraisal is needed. That's what I'm going to do on this one for the sake of clarity here, or for the sake of moving through. So let me grab my test document. There we go. Okay. So once you have all the required information filled out, you'll then go to the update site button here at the top. There is a button here at the bottom that says back to disbursement site selection. Please make sure that you don't click this before you click update site. If you do that, you're going to lose all of your information here. So you'll want to click update site. Oh, see, it's going to get upset because I entered. Take two. There we go. So you'll see once you do that, the address that you've now created, so I changed to 501 so it wouldn't get upset about duplicate addresses here. So once you've done that, it'll show up in the list of properties here. Here, after this, it's also, again, tempting to click back to disbursement site selection when you're done with this screen, but first you need to click Save. Once you've done that, you should get a green check mark on this screen. And then after that, you can then click back to disbursement site selection. So I know this screen has a series of buttons that have to be clicked in a very specific order to get the screen to work correctly. I definitely recommend pulling the disbursement user guide or the slides or something like that to help you along the way as you're working through this to make sure that everything gets saved correctly. So this is the screen that we initially started on when we wanted to create our site. So what you need to do from here, now that we've created our new site, we're going to select the checkbox next to our site and then click Save. Once we've done that, we should get a green check mark here, meaning we are good to go. If you do need to go back and edit the site, you can do that by clicking this edit button here, and then it'll take you back through those same screens to move back into edit whatever you may need to on the site. Okay, I got a question from Habitat here. Can we submit a disbursement request for a home that's already closed with a home buyer, so long as it fits the criteria of the application? As long as all of the, again, the closing as well as all of the documentation you submit is dated after the AHP award date, so that is December 19th of 25, then yes, you can. So just make sure that all your documentation is dated after December 19th of 2025. If the closing happened prior to December 19th, then unfortunately we would not be able to reimburse that one. On the 25 project, at least. If you have a previous project, then we could. Okay. All right, so from here, again, you can go to the drop down at the top to move to whatever screen you want next, or you can click the next button down here. I'm going to click next and go to homeowner selection. Again, this screen is identical between rehab and down payment assistance. So exact same thing you'll see. It'll show the address that you've just entered, and it's going to ask you to enter the homeowner names or home buyer names in this case. Again, this is rehab, so it says homeowner instead of home buyer. That's the one difference. So we're going to add a home buyer. We're going to add their first and last name. And we're going to click Save. When we do that, the address will show up with the name next to it. We can then add any co-homeowners or home buyers. The only people that need to be listed on this screen are those that have actual ownership in the home that will actually be legally an owner of the home. If there's an individual that has, say, an elderly parent or something like that that's living with them and they don't have any ownership in the home, they don't need to be listed here. This is just the people that have legal ownership in the home. So if there is a co-homeowner, a spouse or something like that, you can click Add Co-Homeowner. Same thing, first and last name, click Save, and then they'll be added to the list. Okay, then we get to this question here at the bottom asking, is this a first-time home buyer? Somebody asked about this earlier. The reason we're asking about this is not because it's a requirement for AHP. This again is just a statistical reporting question for AHP. This is something our regulators just like to know and keep track of in regards to the AHP funds. So regardless of if you select yes or no, it's not going to require anything additional. Again, it is not a requirement for AHP that they be a first-time home buyer. You just want to select it as applicable so that we can report that statistically to our regulator. So I'll say no on this one. And then from there, we're going to click Save. And we should get our green check mark on the screen. Okay. Moving on to the next screen, we're going to get our household income. Again, this screen looks identical between rehab and down payment, so you'll see the same exact thing. The first thing you have to do is select the income guidelines you're utilizing. 99.9% of the time, you'll be using the Bank Topeka, the Federal Home Loan Bank Topeka income guidelines. This is the USDA income limits. So this is what we traditionally use. If you do have if you're working with the Native American tribes and think you should be utilizing Native American income guidelines, please reach out to us. We can talk about that, figure that out if that's necessary, or if we will utilize the USDA as well for whatever situation you may be in. But we're going to use the USDA limits for today. It's going to ask me if I've completed an income calculation workbook with all household members. I'm going to say yes. This is your reminder, though, to make sure that your workbook has all household members listed. So please make sure everybody's in there so we're using the correct income limits. I'm going to click Upload. I'm going to find my income calculation workbook that I showed you earlier, and I'm going to click Save. When I do that, assuming that I filled out the workbook correctly, I should get what we see here. The system is automatically going to populate some information from the workbook down below, the income amount, household member name, date of birth, all that good stuff is going to populate here. It's also got our AMI percentages, all that good stuff. And then you'll see a yellow check mark appear at the top of the screen. That means that I've partially filled out this screen, but there's still some information that I need to get done to be able to get my green check mark. And that's because this question popped up here at the bottom. It's going to ask you to certify that the information in the workbook is true and correct to the best of your knowledge. We're going to say yes. And then it's going to ask you to upload the supporting documentation for income. This is going to be your pay stubs, tax returns, zero income certifications, all of that good stuff is what you'll want to upload here. You'll notice there is only one upload box. So in order to upload all the income, you'll either need to combine all of your income documents into one PDF, or you can put them all in a folder and uploaded as a zip file or something up the like. This does the question mark here tells you what kind of files are acceptable, but in general, we see combined PDFs or zip files for income documents. So I'm going to upload those. Again, I'm just going to upload a test document I've got here to get us through. And then I'm going to click Save. And I should now get my green check mark because I filled out all the information necessary to complete this screen. All right, moving on to the next screen. This is going to be the project status information screen. So I talked early in the presentation about guidelines and exceptions. The policies from our implementation plan that may require an exception. This is what I was talking about is these certification statements. Again, I believe all of these certification statements are the same as for down payment assistance projects, but you'll of course be able to go into AHP online here in about a week or so and be able to see all those statements within a disbursement if you initiate one. But You want to be able to certify all these statements yes. If you are answering something no, that's a good indicator that you may need an exception to policy. So when you do select no to something, it's going to ask you for an explanation. So it's kind of going to key you off. Hey, I need to explain something because it's outside of guidelines or violates some policy or provision. Please, if you keep these, please keep these things in mind. And then if you do know that you are not going to fall within the requirements of one of these guidelines or rules, please reach out to us prior to closing, if at all possible. If you reach out to us prior to closing, then we can make sure that if we can provide an exception, we get that approved ahead of time. Because if something is submitted, and then we realize that one of these policies is being violated and it's a regulatory requirement, then we cannot provide an exception around it and we won't be able to fund it. So please, please make sure you're keeping these things in mind. And if you are not meeting one of these requirements, that you're reaching out to us prior to the closing so that we can take care of that and figure out if our funds can be utilized. So again, we're hoping to do yeses all the way down. I'm going to go ahead and do yeses here. If you have any specific questions about any of these policies or rules, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to talk that through with you. I will note that the last question says, I certify that if a property is manufactured housing, it's located on a permanent foundation. Of course, we want this to be yes if the property is manufactured housing, but if the home is not manufactured housing, then it'll be entered NA. So this is the one question where you may not answer, or you may not be entering yes, you may be answering NA instead. Okay. From here, we're going to click save. And I am going to get my green check mark. Okay. Going to move to the next screen here. This is our scoring information screen. Again, looks the same between the two different project types, so you'll still get the general gist here. These scoring commitments, though, again, are going to be specific to your project. So these scoring commitments are specific to the project that I have open at the moment. But yours, of course, may look slightly different based on the commitments that were made in your application and that are listed in your AHP agreement. You'll notice as I'm looking through here, nothing I can really do with this information yet, but what is here is, of course, each of the categories, the project commitment, so the number of units that need to meet each scoring commitment out of the total on your project. Then there's going to be this fulfilled to date column. This is going to show the number of units that meet each scoring commitment that have been funded already. So if it's been funded and money's gone out the door, it'll add to this count. Of course, I don't have anything yet that has been funded on this project. This is brand new, so you're going to see zeros, but you'll see these numbers grow as you start submitting and funding disbursements. Then there's the pending fulfillments column. This column only includes units that have been submitted to us but have not been funded yet. So those things that are counting towards that maximum 8, those are going to be in this pending fulfillments column. So you can also see what you've selected on ones that have been submitted to us. So in order to be able to select the commitments that this disbursement qualifies for, we need to answer this question at the top. It's going to ask you to certify that the scoring commitments remain applicable and will be fulfilled. Of course, hoping you answer this yes. If it's a no, that probably means you need a modification or we need to talk about one potentially. But otherwise, again, answering yes will bring up all the check boxes, upload boxes, things like that that are necessary to be able to select the commitments that this disbursement meets. In addition to the checkboxes and the upload boxes, you'll see some blue document links show up in the center here. These are the documents that you provided to us in application. So if you'd like to reference back to the document you provided for a certain commitment at application, you can download that from here and view it. I'm not going to go through every commitment again, just to save us some time here, but I do want to cover just a few small highlights regarding commitments. If you do have any specific questions regarding your commitments and documentation requirements, again, check out the scoring commitment user guide, but then shoot us an email if you have any specific questions and we're more than happy to help. So the income targeting section. You'll notice that there's a couple different categories here. We have 30, 50, and then 60 to 80. So the 30% commitment you will see show up on all of your projects, even though the 30% commitment is not a targeting category listed on your AHP agreement. This is again one of those things that is a statistical reporting requirement for our regulator. They like to know how many households are below 30% AMI for statistics. So if you have a household that is below 30% AMI, please make sure that you select the 30% AMI category, but then also select the next income category up. The reason we're going to do that is because the 30%, again, just for statistical purposes, but then the 50% category is the actual category that you're meeting from your AHP agreement. So we want to make sure that you're getting credit for the units meeting the requirements of your agreement, but then are also just reporting the extra statistical information below. I'll note it is a number here. This again is not a requirement. This is just one of those things that you may have estimated an application, how many you think you will get below 30, but you're being held to the ones that are up above here. So this project has a total of 100 units. The 50 and the 60 to 80 categories are the ones that are binding for this purpose. So just keep that in mind. If this project, let's say all the units were at 60 to 80% AMI and there was no 50% AMI category. If you had a household below 30, that's acceptable. The households don't have to be between 60 and 80. They just have to be below 80 in essence. And you had one below 30, you would select below 30, and then you'd also select the 60 to 80. So what it is if you have someone below 30, you select the 30% category and then the next available category up that's actually within your targeting requirements. Okay. Concerning the remaining, the one thing that I really want to point out is anything that has the total number of units. So this project has a total of 100 units on it. Anything that has 100 in it is a requirement for all disbursement requests that are submitted under this project. So really, we should be seeing that all of these ones with 100 are selected. If you have a selection that has an upload box associated with it, you'll see it come available when you select the checkbox. Again, that indicates you do need some sort of document, and you'll want to refer to the scoring commitment user guide to figure out what type of acceptable documentation we will take to upload to the disbursement. I will note though, if I left this screen like it is right now, all I've selected is the targeting categories, and I went down to the bottom of this and I click save. It is still going to give me my green check mark saying I'm done, even though I haven't selected the commitments that are required for every single disbursement request. So the system is not checking you on that. Please make sure that you are selecting anything and having home buyers complete documentation necessary to meet the commitments that are requirements for all units. If you don't select it, your reviewer will be following up with you to try and get documentation to remedy that problem. So save them some time, save you some time, and all the back and forth. Make sure you're grabbing all those commitments in the list that are required for every single disbursement. Okay. Again, if you have any specific questions regarding scoring requirements, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I'm more than happy to help you figure out what you need, or if documents and forms you're setting up work well for what we're needing on our end. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next screen to keep us moving here. And we're going to get to our import spreadsheet screens. Again, these screens will look nearly identical to the ones that you will see for down payment assistance. It's just that, of course, our rehab projects will upload a different type of feasibility workbook than you will. But nonetheless, for the sake of seeing the upload process, it'll look the same. So I'm going to go ahead and upload the one that I created for our rehab projects here so that it will function correctly. But what you'll do is you'll upload your feasibility workbook just like this. You'll click Save. And when you do that, you should hopefully get a green check mark. That indicates that the system accepted the workbook and everything looks good from at least the standpoint of how it was filled out. So if you get an error on this screen, the system is pretty good at catching whatever may be wrong in your workbook that would flag an error and would cause it not to upload. The biggest error that we see is that the wrong project year was used for the feasibility workbook. So again, please make sure you grab the 2025 workbook. If you grab any other year, it will not upload successfully and it will give you an error and nice yellow and red text up above. Okay. So once we have a workbook uploaded, we'll move to the feasibility analysis screen. Ideally, your screen is always going to look like this. It's going to tell you that there's no feasibility issues and no actions required on this tab. What this screen is checking for is anything that's outside of guidelines. Your sponsor fee is too high, your homebuyer education fee is too high, the interest rate's too high, the lender fees are too high, whatever those things may be. So please, again, make sure to check out Exhibit B of the implementation plan for all of those lender guidelines, loan guidelines, to make sure that all of your loans fall within those and that you don't have any issues when you reach this tab. If you do, again, have anything that you expect to be outside of guidelines, please reach out to us prior to the closing so that we can figure out if an exception is able to be provided. All right, assuming you get this screen like we hope you do, it says no action is required. That's a little bit of a lie. You do have to click save to get the green check mark on this screen to be able to move through the disbursement. So don't forget to click save to get your green check mark so that you can get this approved. All right, the last screen is going to be for commitment letters. So when you get to this screen, it's going to ask you for documentation. You'll see this one was $500, but this is just because it was a different feasibility workbook. But for our example earlier, I'll pull up the feasibility workbook just so you can see to help, since this didn't turn out quite like we wanted with our example here. So what the system is going to ask for from you, if this was the disbursement feasibility workbook you submitted, is it's going to ask you for documentation to verify the other sources of funds that are entered here in line 40. So there are some other sources of funds. There's a lot of other sources that you don't actually need documentation for. The main ones that we're going to be looking for is if there's any sort of second mortgage, we'll want a copy of the closing documentation for that second mortgage. If there's any sort of third-party grants, so this one has a grant from a third party, we will want documentation to verify any other grants. But those are the main two that we're going to see, is if there's any sort of second mortgage or a grant from another agency. That's the main things we're looking for. Again, the title and taxes and assessments are all pretty classic items to see down there, and we don't need documentation of those. It's just those third-party grants and second mortgages. So for our circumstance, what would happen if we would have uploaded this workbook and my system would have cooperated with me here? On the screen that we have here in AHP Online, it would be showing the $13,597. Where this $500 is. So that's the only difference that would happen here. And it would ask you to upload documentation. Again, for any sort of second mortgage, we're going to be looking for the closing documents to verify the loan terms on the second mortgage. There are some guidelines regarding second mortgages that are listed again in Exhibit B. So please make sure to check those out if there is a second mortgage. For any sort of grants that are received by the household from another organization, we will need a letter or other sort of documentation that verifies three things. We need it to have the home buyer name or address of some form. We need it to have the amount of the grant that was provided, and we need it to verify that there is no repayment required. So again, the three things is the name of the home buyer or the address of the property being purchased, something to tie it to the home buyer, the amount of the grant provided, and that there is no repayment requirement on that grant. So that's what we're looking for there. To upload that documentation, again, if you have multiple sources you need to upload for, you can combine it all together into one PDF. You'll click attach here. You'll click the upload box. You'll upload your document, click update commitment letter. And when you do that, this letter provided column is going to change from a no to a yes. So you'll want to make sure that you have yeses across the board if there are multiple here, but you'll generally just have the one. You'll click or make sure this says yes, and then you'll click save. And you should get your green check mark here. So again, if you have any questions about documentation, you have a weird source of funds, something like that, that you're not sure we need documentation for, or what kind of documentation to provide, just let us know. Happy to help you with that. Okay. I'm going to move to our next screen, and this is going to be our final screen. This is the one screen that's going to really have differences between the down payment assistance and our rehabilitation. So you'll see, because I'm in a rehabilitation project, this thing is asking me for a final cost certification and estimates and invoices and the inspector credentials and all that stuff. Your screen is going to look the same, but there'll be a different list of documents here. It'll ask for the closing disclosure. So that will be one document. It'll ask for the real estate retention agreement, and then it'll have a miscellaneous box, and that is it. So it'll just have the three. So you'll upload your closing disclosure to this screen, the real estate retention agreement, the recorded real estate retention agreement, and then there's that miscellaneous box available there in case there's anything additional that you need to provide to us that doesn't fit into an upload box somewhere else, or you think may be helpful for the review. So anything in this requirement column, if it says required, of course that means required. So you want to make sure that you fill those in. That's going to be the closing disclosure and the real estate retention agreement for you. So you'll want to grab those there. Anything, of course, that's optional. So your miscellaneous box will be optional since there's nothing you have to upload there. The other thing you'll see is this has template column. This is just indicating if we have a template available on our public website for whatever the document may be. So for the closing disclosure, you'll see a no. For the real estate retention agreement, you'll see a yes. And for miscellaneous, you'll have a no. So again, those are the only significant differences between the rehabilitation project we're looking at for the moment for this example versus a down payment assistance project in AHP Online. So in order to upload documents, you just have to click Edit. There's an upload box. Grab your document. Click Update Request Document, and if it successfully uploads, you'll see the name of the document show up to the right. So I'm going to just go ahead and fill these in for the sake of getting these uploaded so that we can get through this screen. But of course, again, you will just have a closing disclosure box, a real estate retention agreement box, and a miscellaneous box. Okay. The last thing that's on this screen is this project documents section. There's nothing you need to do with these documents. That's what that no further action. These are just documents that we here at the Federal Home Loan Bank upload to your project so that we can reference them throughout the project lifecycle. They show up in every disbursement request. So if there's a certain document that we need to be able to reference in every single disbursement request, instead of requiring you guys to upload it over and over and over, we'll just upload it to this project documents section so that it can be referenced time and again so that you don't have to keep uploading the same thing over and over. One of those things is this AHP agreement. So your legal agreement that you recently signed, you'll find a copy of it on this screen. Just like you see here, you can view it. You can download a copy from here if you would like. Can't edit or delete it or anything like that. Again, this is just strictly for informational purposes and for your downloading if you would like to have it. Okay, so I'm going to click Save on this screen, and assuming I have filled out all the required documents or uploaded them, I should get my green check mark. And you'll be happy to know once we move to the next button here, we will be done. So that is all of the screens in our disbursement request. Again, I really appreciate your flexibility with me here, working with a rehab project instead of DPA. Again, the only major difference is the names of the documents, the type of documents you upload to project and disbursement documentation. So generally, you should see the same steps followed for your project as you receive it next week. So once you have green check marks all the way down, then you are able to approve this disbursement request. In order to do that, you just click approve here. A couple of certification statements will show up here, mostly saying that you're not engaging in covered misconduct, that you're following all legal requirements, all that good stuff. We want you to be able to answer yes to those, of course. And when you do that, you'll see the status change details box appear at the top, and it's going to tell you that the disbursement has been changed from a status of pending to sponsor approved. So again, at this point, now that you have sponsor approved it, it has not quite been received by us here at the Federal Home Loan Bank. What needs to happen from here is that once you sponsor approve, the member contacts for your member bank that are selected on your project will receive an automated email asking them to approve the disbursement. They will go into AHP online, they'll approve the disbursement, and then once they do, it'll arrive here on our desks at the Federal Home Loan Bank. So at that point, it has been submitted to us, and we are able to start reviewing it. If we have any members on the call, for you all, there is pretty little responsibility. What I described right now is pretty much the extent of the responsibility of our member agencies. So as a member, you will go in, and when you do receive those automated emails, you will approve those disbursement requests. You do not have to fill anything out in the disbursement request. You can review as much or as little of it as you would like. That is up to you. You are welcome to go in and just click approve if that's what you would like to do. You are also welcome to review every screen if you want to. So up to you on that one. But that is going to be the main responsibility from our member end. And then, of course, once we fund the disbursements here at the Federal Home Loan Bank, we will put the funds into the member DDA account here at the Federal Home Loan Bank. So then you can request a wire to receive those funds and distribute them to the sponsor as necessary, or as you guys have decided to distribute that to them. All right. That is the majority of my content. I have like 2 last slides. You guys are welcome to throw any questions in the box while I'm going through these last 2 slides, and I'll help cover those as we wrap up here. But the last few things I just wanted to cover real quick. All the slides that I just skipped are screenshots of the disbursement request process. So you can check those out at your pleasure when you receive the slides. So this is a list of the automated emails that get sent. If, like I said, when the disbursement is sponsor approved, then the member will receive an automated email. When the member approves it, the sponsor contacts will receive an automated email letting them know it's been approved, all that good stuff. So this list just tells you what emails get sent and who receives those emails. Okay. Mentioned earlier something about Proofpoint. We do take security really seriously and want to make sure that your home buyer's information is as secure as possible, that that's not just getting out into the web. So if you have anything with personally identifiable information or other private information that you need to send to us, please utilize Proofpoint to do so. Again, if you do not have a Proofpoint account yet, please email someone here in HCD, and we will get you a link to sign up for Proofpoint so that you can start sending things securely to us. All right, last but not least, if you all, we're really happy to be able to celebrate any events with you. I know sometimes you guys do ribbon cuttings, open houses, things like that. We want to support you in celebrating the AHP funds. We're really thankful for all the work that you all do in your communities and 100% want to support that. So if you have any sort of events that you would like help with the marketing materials or press releases or anything like that, we're happy to help with any of that. We're happy to attend and help celebrate with you. Please reach out to us if you do have any of those events. And we'd be happy to send a team or help you however we can in celebrating your AHP award. Okay, my contact information is on this last screen. Again, I will be sending all of you an email tomorrow that lets you know who your analyst is for your project. They are going to be your main point of contact, just because they will know all the ins and outs of your project. We'll be reviewing disbursement requests and kind of building that relationship with you so that they know what you're working through and can help you with whatever you need help with. But again, if you have any questions about anything covered in training today, any of the guides, income calculation, all that good stuff, your analyst is going to be your main point of contact. If they are not available, you are, of course, welcome to reach out to me, and I'm happy to help you guys however I can. So this is my contact information here if you do need to get a hold of me. Other than that, that is the content that I have today. I do have a few questions in the chat, it looks like, so I'm going to cover those real quick and then set you free. But if you need to go, you are welcome to head out if you don't want to stay for questions. So appreciate you guys coming today. Thank you so much. Appreciate all the work you do. And have a great afternoon. All right, questions that I got. We'd like to know, After a disbursement has been fully submitted, what is the typical timeline for reimbursement, including your review process? So once you have submitted the disbursement to us here at the Federal Home Loan Bank, our turn times on getting them reviewed are highly dependent on how much follow-up is necessary, especially for our down payment assistance projects. We can get them turned around in as quick as a week or two if they're really clean. But if there's a bunch of follow-up we have to do and back and forth, stuff like that, then it may take longer, of course. So we generally throw something like 30 days-ish out there. But again, highly dependent on the amount of back and forth we have to do with you and corrections we have to get in order to do that. Once we have approved the disbursement for funding on our end, we will send the funds to your member bank. I believe it's within 24 hours. And then from there, they have to wire the funds to their organization. And that may require another 24 hours or so just to get all of that situated. So I'd probably say somewhere around 48 to 72 hours afterwards, you should be able to get those funds from your member once we have sent those over to them. Okay. I think that is the only question I have at the moment. Again, thank you all for joining. If you have any additional questions, I'll sit on here for another few minutes here and take any additional questions you have. Otherwise, have a wonderful afternoon. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, and you should receive an email from me tomorrow with your analyst's name and a copy of these slides. Thank you. Dates and processes. Someone asked me to cover um, dates and processes in terms of our process, I'm assuming you're asking about. Sorry, you can go ahead and enter in the chat. It shouldn't blow up the bigger chat. You're just talking about the our disbursement process internally and how they get submitted to how you get your money out the door. Is that what we're kind of referring to? The enrollment date. So the enrollment date is kind of separate from our turn times and stuff like that. So 90 days out for closing, we inform you. No. So you guys will enroll the household. You will go all the way through. Honestly, here at the Federal Home Loan Bank, we won't review anything until after closing. So you don't have to inform us of anything prior. The enrollment date is the date that you all at your organization enroll the household for income. So you will do all the enrollment and all of those things, the income qualification, things like that. You'll make sure you gather all the scoring documents and then continue all the way through the closing. And then once you are done with that whole process, you will submit a reimbursement request into us. So we honestly will not see anything until after closing, unless you have any questions that you reach out to us for. So the 90 days is the amount of time you have to submit the disbursement after the closing has already occurred. So once the closing has happened for the loan, you have 90 days from that point to submit your reimbursement request into us for us to reimburse the funds that you fronted in that closing. Does that help? Yeah, so definitely different than turnkey. So for turnkey, they do a reservation disbursement format. We're looking at switching to that for AHP in the future, but haven't reached that point yet where we're able to do a reservation disbursement format. So we just do disbursement. So yes, if you have any specific questions ahead of your closing, if there's anything that you're concerned maybe outside of guidelines or isn't working, or you have a weird income situation and you're not sure if the income documents are correct or something like that, your analyst will definitely be happy to help with those questions ahead of time. We can't review everything ahead of time necessarily, because if we're doing that, then we've got so much extra workload that our analysts may not be able to get through all of that. But they're happy to answer specific questions, or if you have a specific concern about the type of income at hand or something like that, we can definitely take a look at that and help you out as you're getting rolling on your project. Yes, enrollment date importance. So in terms of the enrollment date, so the enrollment date is the date that you have all income documents for all household members and you are ready to calculate their total income as a household. So you're able to sit down with an income calculation workbook and fill it out in its entirety. The reason that that date is so important is because our income guidelines in terms of what we'll take for documentation is based on that date. So most income documents are going to have to be dated within the 60 days prior to your enrollment date, excuse me. So when you're looking at, let's say that I was going to qualify somebody today. I collected all the income documents from the household here in the past few weeks. I've got it all put together. I have everybody's stuff, zero income certs, all of it, pay stubs, tax returns, whatever I needed. I collected it all, and I am ready to sit down today and enroll the household as an income, qualify them, and fill out the income calculation workbook. So my enrollment date would be today, February 5th. So I need to make sure that with that enrollment date, all the income documents I'm looking at are dated within the 60 days prior of today. So in essence, that's to make sure that all the income documents are dated within the same time frame. Of course, again, there are caveats to that. Things like Social Security, tax returns, you only get those once a year. So it may not be specifically dated within the 60 days prior for those documents, but the income calculation guide will specify the difference between those things. But things like pay stubs, VOEs, P&Ls, I know it's a lot of acronyms. All those things are generally going to need to be dated within the 60 days prior so that we're looking at income documents all from the same time frame. Does that help you with that one? Okay, perfect. Yes, absolutely. Happy to answer whatever questions I can. I know it's hard when we're sitting here with a chat box and I can talk and you guys can't. So if you guys have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me or your analyst when I send you their name tomorrow. And they can definitely help you with any specific questions. And if you ever need to hop on a Teams call or something to talk through stuff, our analysts are always really happy to do that and are very helpful with that. So don't hesitate to reach out.